Chapter 859. Pan Gu created the sky and Hung Jun preached the Tao. There was no underworld in the untainted world. The souls of the dead wandered in the untainted world. The heavenly Tao sensed it and created the underworld. The forgetful river Great Emperor and the others were the first generation of the underworld. However, in the ancient and distant past, these people seemed to have disappeared into thin air, leaving only legends about them. Today, no one would have thought that the legendary people of the underworld would appear in the world. There must be a shocking secret hidden in this. Perhaps the truth of the past would be revealed in today's fight for the red spider lily. Amitabha. The Buddha's light illuminated the world. Di Ting carried Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva and floated over. He was wearing a white monk robe and had a benevolent look. He was not surprised by the appearance of the forgetful river Great Emperor and the others. It was as if he already knew that the three of them would appear here. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva greets the three seniors. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva put his palms together and bowed to the forgetful river Great Emperor and the others. Little monk, you have stayed in the 18 levels of hell for countless years. You can be considered to have some relationship with me. Could it be that you want to fight with me for the red spider lily? The netherworld Great Emperor smiled and looked at Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. This poor monk's cultivation is weak. How would I dare to fight with you three seniors? It's just that the red spider lily is an extraordinary item of heaven and earth. This poor monk just wants to witness the blooming of this flower. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva put his palms together and said humbly. What about you? The netherworld Great Emperor was still smiling. He turned around and looked at the four ghost emperors. This made the Fengdu Emperor and the others' expressions change drastically. They did not know how to answer him. Could it be that you little ghost emperors dare to fight with me? The netherworld Great Emperor's smile disappeared. His face instantly became extremely cold. Don't look at the harmless appearance of the netherworld Great Emperor, he was the most vicious amongst the three of them. The tortures of the 18 layers of hell were also researched by him. You old guys, I didn't expect you to dare to appear again. Aren't you afraid that the past will repeat itself? Suddenly, two figures appeared in the sky above the river of Forgetful River. Billowing blood light rushed into the sky. Boundless evil chi surged like waves. Heavenly retribution. The blood-red light dissipated, and a young man and woman appeared. The man and woman wore blood-red robes, and their skin was ghastly pale. Their eyes were protruding, and they would cause anyone who looked at them to feel extreme fear. When the man and woman in red appeared, everyone present frowned, especially Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. His expression changed greatly. He put his palms together and chanted sutras. There was an extremely heavy look in his eyes. Heavenly Punishment and Earthly Fiend were the names of the man and woman in blood-red robes. The two of them were the legendary evil devils of the underworld. They were born from the underworld's most evil chi and were born with an undying body. Just like the Nether River Patriarch, they were extremely difficult to deal with. Of course, the so-called immortal body was just a general statement. Even saints did not dare to claim that they were immortal. However, because these two people were born from the chi of extreme yin and extreme evil, even if their original bodies were destroyed, as long as a trace of the chi of extreme yin and extreme evil remained, their bodies could be reconstructed. In the past, before Taoist Jiayin had become a sage, he had found the two of them under the banner of subduing demons and devils. He had even killed the two of them in one fell swoop. Everyone thought that Heavenly Execution and Earthly Fiend had died. They did not expect that the two of them were still alive. All of a sudden, the legendary figures of the underworld appeared one after another, causing the entire area to feel extremely oppressive. The Yin soldiers and ghost generals guarding the red spider lily trembled in fear. You juniors, get the hell out here for this great ant. The Earth Fiend laughed sinisterly. Her cultivation was too terrifying. When she struck out with her palm, the surrounding void collapsed. A large number of people from the netherworld appeared from the darkness, causing the sky above the river of forgetfulness to be filled with people. Ghost Emperor Mount Mang. Suddenly, the Emperor of Fengdu saw a familiar figure and his face instantly turned red. Hee hee. Fengdu, what do you think of my gift to you? Ghost Emperor Mount Mang was also an overlord in the underworld. Although he was not one of the 5 ghost emperors, his cultivation was not inferior to the Emperor of Fengdu's. Furthermore, he was the Emperor of Fengdu's sworn enemy. At this moment, he was sneering at the Emperor of Fengdu. The people who besieged my Fengdu city are your people? The Emperor of Fengdu said hatefully. Hee hee, so what if you guessed it? Today, with so many seniors here, I don't dare to ask for the red spider lily. However, I want your Fengdu city. Ghost Emperor Mount Mang laughed maniacally. He turned into a ray of light and shot toward Fengdu city. The Emperor of Forgetfulness and the others naturally would not be calculative with such a junior. After all, the other party was also a quasi-sage. One less person competing for the red spider lily would reduce the pressure on them. Damn it. Looking at Ghost Emperor Mount Mang heading toward Fengdu city, the Emperor of Fengdu's face turned pale. He wanted to chase after him, but before he could do anything, the 3 ghost emperors suddenly blocked his path. Fengdu, the red spider lily is of great importance. It's fine if you don't want a small Fengdu city, the ghost emperor of the east reminded coldly. Hearing Shintu's words, the Emperor of Fengdu instantly calmed down. He knew that now was not the time to be distracted. The red spider lily is not something that you can covet. All of you, back off. Don't throw your lives away for nothing. Old Ancestor Yellow Spring said in a hoarse voice. His pair of eyes looked around, causing the expressions of many ghost immortals and ghost kings to change slightly. Buzz. Suddenly, just as the atmosphere was extremely oppressive, the 3 live stone shone. The red spider lily that grew flowers and leaves slowly bloomed. An intoxicating floral fragrance permeated the air at this moment. Rumble. A sweet rain fell from the sky, and a sweet spring gushed out from the ground. The originally dim sky of the underworld was now as bright as day. Golden rain fell from the sky, and large patches of red spider lilies were rapidly blooming. Strands of resplendent multicolored light rose from the sea of red spider lilies, and the red spider lilies that grew together with the leaves rose from the ground, and then floated in the void, swaying gently. The red spider lily has bloomed. The Emperor of Forgetfulness roared excitedly. He stretched out his palm and grabbed at the red spider lily. The others did not want to fall behind. They all used their own supernatural powers to try and get the red spider lily in their hands. Forgetfulness, don't make a mistake. The Emperor of Netherworld was at the pinnacle of the quasi-saint realm. He gathered 18 hell ghost arts and attacked the Emperor of Forgetfulness violently. The 2 of them were on par with each other in terms of cultivation. Old Ancestor Yellow Spring, you are no match for me and my wife. This flower should belong to me and my wife. Heavenly Retribution and Earthly Fiend roared and attacked Old Ancestor Yellow Spring madly. Yellow Spring Rotation. Old Ancestor Yellow Spring was too terrifying. He didn't waste any time talking nonsense. He unleashed the great art of Yellow Spring and clashed with Heavenly Retribution and Earthly Malice. Interesting, interesting. Just as the few quasi-saints were fighting each other to snatch the red spider lily, a chuckle sounded in the void. Old Ancestor Nether River and Yi Xian came together. The Emperor of Fengdu and the others were overjoyed. Chapter 860. Brother Qing Ming, you're finally here. The Emperor of Fengdu's pale face became rosy as these people gave him a lot of pressure. Now that Yi Xian and the Nether River Patriarch had arrived, he finally felt relieved. Bang! There was a loud explosion and the void was in chaos. The top figures of the underworld stopped and separated themselves. All of them looked at Yi Xian and the Nether River Patriarch. Nether River, you're really needed here. The Emperor of River of Forgetfulness sneered. He knew the Nether River Patriarch very well, as they were one of the oldest figures in the underworld. Brother Nether River, it's been a long time since we last met. Do you still remember me? The Nether River Patriarch spoke in a hoarse voice. His body was surrounded by the light of the Nether River as he nodded and smiled at Nether River. It's getting more and more interesting. Now that even Nether River has appeared, I wonder who else wants to snatch the red spider lilies from us. Tianzhua Disha sneered. However, his eyes were fixed on Yi Xian as a murderous intent flashed across his eyes. You must be Brother Qingming, right? The Emperor of Netherworld was observing Yi Xian with hostility in his eyes. When Yi Xian had just entered the underworld, he had injured Grandmother Nether with one blow. Furthermore, Mengpa had come forward to plead for Grandmother Nether so that she could be spared from death. The thing that made the top figures of the underworld slightly fearful was that Mengpa had once crowned Yi Xian as the strongest person below the sage. This also made them treat Yi Xian as a great enemy. At this moment, Yi Xian stood in the air with his hands behind his back. He could completely feel that these people harbored great hostility towards him, and strands of their auras were locked onto his body. He was afraid that if he made any abnormal movements, these people would explode and attack him. What a great plan to divert trouble. Yi Xian's eyes flickered as he thought of something. He turned to look in the direction of the Bridge of Helplessness, a cold light flashing through his eyes. Yi Xian understood. He understood why Mengpo would praise him so much. This was clearly to make him the target of public criticism and put him on the opposite side of everyone. Without a doubt, Mengpo was very successful. She had successfully achieved her goal. With just a simple sentence, she had turned Yi Xian into a thorn in everyone's flesh. Of course, even though Mengpa had used some tricks to make these people view him as a great enemy, Yi Xian did not care much about these ancient figures of the underworld. However, it would be a little troublesome to deal with these people, and he would have to reveal his original cultivation. This was not something he was willing to do. Moreover, Yi Xian would not follow Mengpo's wishes and really fight with these ancient figures of the underworld. Fellow Taoists, although this flower is good, I, Qingming, don't care about it. If any of you have the ability, you can take it. I don't want to participate in today's fight. Yi Xian smiled and retreated thousands of miles away. He did not even bother to look at the red spider lily. It was as if he was not here for the red spider lily. Fellow Taoist Qingming, you can't. Looking at Yi Xian's retreat, the Emperor of Fengdu's expression changed drastically. Without Yi Xian's help, how could he compete with these ancient figures of the underworld for the red spider lily? Shut up. Suddenly, Patriarch Nether River scolded. This also made the Emperor of Fengdu's expression change. He could only swallow the words in his mouth. However, there was still a deep unwillingness in his eyes. Moreover, there was a trace of undetectable resentment in his eyes. At this moment, Ghost Emperor Mang Shan had led thousands of ghosts to invade his Fengdu city. This had already caused him great losses. At this moment, Yi Xian had announced that he would withdraw from the fight for the red spider lily. This was simply like drawing water with a bamboo basket. How could the Emperor of Fengdu not be resentful? Good for you, Qingming. Good for you, Mingyi. How dare you look down on me like this? You two dogs better remember this. All of this is because of you. The red spider lily will definitely be mine. No one can take it away from me. The Emperor of Fengdu lowered his eyebrows. His expression was unusually calm. However, he was roaring like a madman in his heart. There was a faint trace of red in his eyes. Obviously, he also had his own trump card. It was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Fellow Taoists, I don't believe that the red spider lily can make someone a saint. I will withdraw from today's fight. Patriarch Nether River's eyes turned. Then, he retreated thousands of miles away with Yi Xian. This posture also made the ancient quasi-saints of the underworld stunned. They looked at Yi Xian and Mingyi with surprise and doubt. Initially, the arrival of Mingyi and Yi Xian made them feel like they were facing a great enemy. However, at this moment, the two of them withdrew from the fight. How could this not make them feel strange? Boom! Suddenly, just as everyone was in deep thought, Heavenly Execution and Earthly Fiend suddenly shot toward the red spider lily. Obviously, the husband and wife did not care about what the people present thought. The two of them only wanted to take the red spider lily. This was Heavenly Execution and Earthly Fiend's goal. How dare you! The Emperor of the Netherworld had been paying attention to the movements in the field. He was guarding against the sudden attack of others to snatch the red spider lily. This also made him take out a ghost seal and smash it toward Heavenly Execution and Earthly Fiend. Netherworld, you're courting death. Heavenly Execution and Earthly Fiend were both quasi-saints. Although their individual cultivation was not as good as anyone present, the power that the two of them displayed together was extremely terrifying. The Emperor of the Netherworld did not dare to say that he could win against the two of them. Two sky-high blood swords appeared. Heavenly Execution and Earthly Fiend attacked the Emperor of the Netherworld in an instant. Suddenly, this part of the world was broken into pieces. Some of the weaker ghost immortals screamed and fled for their lives. Come! The old ancestor of the Netherworld pointed at the universe and grabbed toward the red spider lily. However, before he could touch the red spider lily, the Emperor of the River of Forgetfulness attacked. The two of them immediately fought. Bang! 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 The firmament collapsed and the void shattered. None of these ancient sage-to-be of the underworld were ordinary people. Even among the sage-to-be, they were extremely powerful existences. When they fought each other, just the aftershocks that bloomed were enough to make people retreat. Otherwise, they would definitely be caught in the crossfire and turned into ashes, dying miserably between heaven and earth. Buzz! The red spider lily bloomed. The flower bloomed on the other shore. This red spider lily that grew together with the flower and the leaf was extremely beautiful. It bobbed up and down in the void. No matter how they fought each other, they deliberately avoided this flower. They were deeply afraid that they would destroy this treasure in their hands. Thousands of miles away, Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back, calmly and indifferently watching the battle of the few terrifying figures of the underworld. Meanwhile, the old ancestor of the Nether River stood beside him with his eyes slightly narrowed. He did not know what Yi Xian was planning. With your cultivation and me, although these people are difficult to deal with, it is not difficult for you and me to take this red spider lily. Are you really not interested in this red spider lily? This is not like your style. The old ancestor of the Nether River questioned. Chapter 861. Yi Xian smiled when he heard Nether River ancestor's words. However, his smile was a little strange. He said in a low voice, I'm naturally interested in this flower. However, it's not that simple. Just watch quietly. Nether River ancestor was stunned. He had long felt that Yi Xian must have discovered something. However, Yi Xian had not said anything and he did not ask. This allowed him to focus on the battle between the few of them. However, he did not find anything unusual. These people's cultivation levels are about the same. If we have to determine who's stronger, Old Ancestor Yellow Spring, Heavenly Retribution, and Earthly Fiend should be the strongest. The red spider lily is very likely to fall into the hands of these three people, Old Ancestor Styx River commented in a deep voice. Hee. Yi Xian smiled. His gaze was not on the few of them, nor did he look at the red spider lily. Instead, he stared at the three-life stone beside the Forgetfulness River as if he was looking at something interesting. Got it. Bang! The void exploded and blood mist sprayed out. Heavenly Execution and Earthly Execution were indeed terrifying. Heavenly Execution blocked the Netherworld Emperor alone and took a hit from the ghostly sky seal. Earthly execution also took advantage of the chaos to grab the red spider lily. How dare you! Such a scene caused the rest of the people to go berserk. They all stopped fighting and charged towards Earth Fiend. God's Retribution, on the other hand, laughed sinisterly. His entire body instantly turned into a bloody light that filled the sky. He stood in front of the others and an extremely excited voice rang out from his mouth. "Madam, leave quickly. I'll explode my blood body to stop them." Tianzhu laughed maniacally. His laughter was extremely smug because he and Disha were both born from the chi of extreme yin. Even if his physical body was destroyed by them, as long as there was a trace of his chi left, he could be reborn again. Although his cultivation level would plummet, he would be able to obtain the red spider lily. This was more worth it than a business deal. Damn it! The Forgetfulness River Emperor's expression changed drastically. He formed a seal with both hands, trying to stop earthly execution from leaving. Nether River Ancestor and the rest also used various sealing techniques to attack the couple. However, Heavenly Execution suddenly clapped his hands and a destructive aura spread out. "Farewell, fellow Taoists. If we can become saints in the future, we will definitely repay the kindness you have shown us today." God's Retribution laughed maniacally. With a loud explosion, God's Retribution self-destructed. The power spread out in all directions. Rumble. The void crumbled and the heavens and earth turned dark. Sky Execution was an extremely strong existence among the quasi-sages. His self-destruction was even more terrifying. Even though the Grand Emperor of the River of Forgetfulness and the others were unwilling to accept this, they could only use their defensive techniques to defend against this destructive force. They then watched as Earth Emanation escaped into the void with the Permetha flower. Yi Xian, chase after him. When this sudden scene occurred, the Nether River Patriarch's expression changed drastically. He even secretly sent an anxious voice transmission to Yi Xian. The Tongtian's blood light also erupted from his body, and he was about to give chase to the Earth Emanations. What's the rush? The show has just begun. Suddenly, without waiting for the Nether River Patriarch to make a move, Yi Xian pressed his palm on the Nether River Patriarch's shoulder, stopping him in his tracks. Yi Xian's actions left the Nether River Patriarch dumbfounded and confused. However, before he could ask for the reason, what happened next left the Nether River Patriarch dumbfounded on the spot. The ancient figures of the underworld fell silent. Roar! The 3 lives stone on the banks of the River of Forgetfulness. This was a strange stone that looked ordinary. Because one could only step onto the Bridge of Helplessness after passing through the 3 lives stone, it had become a landmark stone on the banks of the River of Forgetfulness. However, at this moment, the 3 lives stone shone with an indescribable light. A terrifying roar came from the 3 lives stone. Whoosh whoosh, a chilling wind blew across the world, causing the weather to change constantly. A crack actually appeared on the 3 lives stone as a strand of black smoke eerily rose from it. Strange laughter and roars could be heard from all directions, causing one's body and mind to tremble violently upon hearing them. Roar! The black smoke rising from the 3 lives stone suddenly transformed into a strange black shadow. The boundless aura of resentment covered the heavens and earth, instantly trapping the earth malevolence who had fled into the void. However, this was not the end. Something even stranger and more terrifying happened. A strange black shadow suddenly appeared beside Earth Emanation. His body suddenly transformed into a hideous ghost face. Under Earth Emanation's shocked and dazed gaze, this hideous ghost face actually opened up its bloody mouth and swallowed Earth Emanation into its mouth. Crack! Ghost fog filled the air, and resentment filled the air. An ear-piercing chewing sound was heard, and the Earth Fiend was brutally chewed into pieces by the sinister ghost face. Wisps of scarlet blood dripped from the void. No! The Earth Fiend screamed miserably. She was a powerful quasi-saint, but she could not resist at all. Amidst her shrill screams, she turned into a cloud of blood mist, and her soul dissipated into the world. Kakik. The sinister ghost face disappeared, and it turned into a strange black shadow once again. Extremely terrifying resentment wrapped around his body. At this moment, his back was facing everyone, and he was laughing eerily, giving off an extremely eerie feeling. Buzz! The red spider lily reappeared in the void, and its petals were still dazzling. However, it floated beside the strange black shadow, and this awakened everyone from the underworld. Who are you? This scene made the river of forgetfulness great emperor roar in anger. However, his eyes were trembling, and there was fear in them. It was as if he had discovered the identity of the strange black shadow, but he could not believe it. It was not only the river of forgetfulness great emperor, but the old ancestor Yellow Spring and the others also looked extremely solemn. One must know that the heavenly punishment and the earth fiend were born from the most evil chi, and they could be said to have an immortal body. However, the fact that the earth fiend had died tragically in the mouth of the strange black shadow shocked them to the extreme. No way, no shape, no form. In the heavens and earth, only I reign supreme. The strange black shadow slowly turned around in the void, and his face finally appeared in front of everyone from the underworld. He had no eyes, no nose, and no mouth. Apart from the boundless resentment surrounding him, this strange black shadow was actually a faceless person. Impossible! The river of forgetfulness great emperor screamed in horror. How can you still be alive? The netherworld great emperor took 3 steps back. Formless heavenly ghost. The old ancestor Yellow Spring's eyes froze, and he said the person's name word by word. However, when the old ancestor Yellow Spring finished speaking, the world suddenly became extremely oppressive, and there were sounds of people inhaling cold air continuously. Formless heavenly ghost. It was an unfamiliar term, but it was an existence that was like a nightmare to the underworld. In the past, no one knew how many quasi-saints had died tragically in the hands of the formless heavenly ghost. If Mengpa had not killed it, the entire underworld might have been destroyed in a day. However, no one would have thought that the formless heavenly ghost had been killed by Mengpa in the past. How could it still be alive and appear in front of them? This is bad. The old ancestor Nether River roared in a trembling voice. His expression became extremely solemn, and there was deep fear in his eyes. This is getting more and more interesting. Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back, and he did not show any surprise from the beginning to the end. It was as if the appearance of the formless heavenly ghost was within his expectations. Chapter 862. Yi Xian, we're in big trouble. The Nether River Patriarch transmitted his voice solemnly, his brows tightly knitted together. Trouble? Yi Xian smiled. His smile was very strange, and when his smile fell into the eyes of the Nether River ancestor, it caused him to suffocate. He felt that Yi Xian must have discovered something. Could it be that you know this faceless heavenly ghost too? The Nether River Patriarch muttered in surprise. No, I don't. Yi Xian slowly shook his head, the strange smile on his face growing wider. But I'd like to know what the person behind this faceless heavenly ghost is thinking. The person behind this? The Nether River Patriarch exclaimed in horror. A light flashed across his eyes. He seemed to have thought of something, and his expression became extremely serious. It's her. The Nether River Patriarch suddenly looked in the direction of the Bridge of Helplessness, his eyes flashing with uncertainty. The show has just begun. I'd like to see what tricks she can play. Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back. His expression was calm from beginning to end, as if everything was under his control. Kakik. The faceless heavenly ghost was laughing out loud. His extremely terrifying resentment covered the sky and the earth, causing the important figures of the underworld to fall silent. Damn it! Buzz! The void swirled, and evil energy grew. Heavenly Execution's body was being reconstructed. In just 3 breaths, he reappeared. However, His face was extremely pale. It was obvious that self-destructing his previous physical body had taken a great toll on him. However, the fact that earthly fiend had been killed by the faceless heavenly ghost made him even more furious. Faceless heavenly ghost, how can you still be alive? The great emperor of the river of forgetfulness took a step forward and exclaimed in shock. Even now, he still hadn't recovered from his shock. Interesting, interesting. I didn't think that after so many years, so many people would still remember me. Should I feel honored? The faceless heavenly ghost walked in the void, the resentment around him rolling without end. His voice was sinister and strange, causing the great emperor of the river of forgetfulness and the others' expressions to turn extremely grave. They all maintained a safe distance from him. Are you afraid of me? The faceless heavenly ghost chuckled sinisterly, its voice filled with pride. Faceless heavenly ghost, I don't care why you are still alive. The red spider lily is not something you can occupy. As long as you leave this place, we will not make things difficult for you. The Netherworld Emperor frowned slightly. Ha! The faceless heavenly ghost laughed maniacally as if it had heard the funniest joke in the world. You clowns, you were all defeated by this ghost in the past. How dare you speak to this ghost like this today? Are you tired of living? The non-phase heavenly ghost spoke viciously, not giving any face to the people present. I'll give you 3 breaths of time. If you don't leave by then, you can leave your lives here. The formless heavenly ghost did not belong to the 6 paths of Tao and existed between the realms of illusion and reality. Moreover, because it was formed from the resentment of all living beings, it was an invincible existence among the demi-saints. Naturally, it did not take the Emperor of the River of Forgetfulness and the others seriously. Little evil ghost, do you really think this ancestor is afraid of you? Suddenly, just as the atmosphere was extremely tense, old ancestor Yellow Spring took a step forward. The water of the Yellow Spring surged, and wisps of murky aura surrounded him. Old ancestor Yellow Spring did not waste any words. He was also the strongest existence in the group. Moreover, he was born from the Yellow Spring and contained the filthy aura of the world. Therefore, he was not afraid of the faceless heavenly ghost. Die! The sky darkened as the Yellow Spring overturned the sky. Old ancestor Yellow Spring activated his boundless great art and turned the sky into a torrential yellow spring. Under the great art of old ancestor Yellow Spring, it directly attacked the faceless heavenly ghost. You think you can do that? The faceless heavenly ghost laughed sinisterly. He turned into a ghostly fog that covered the sky and charged at old ancestor Yellow Spring. The two instantly clashed and an extremely terrifying battle broke out. Everyone, why don't we kill the faceless heavenly ghost together and then discuss the ownership of the red spider lily? The Emperor of the River of Forgetfulness roared. Alright, let's kill this evil ghost first, Heavenly Retribution said ruthlessly. None of us can get the red spider lily if the faceless heavenly ghost is not killed. Let's kill him together, the Netherworld Emperor said coldly. Rumble. The sky collapsed and the great art shook the sky. Several people rushed into the sky and unleashed their strongest cultivation to besiege the faceless heavenly ghost. Clearly, all of them knew how terrifying the faceless heavenly ghost was. If they did not join forces, they would not be a match for the faceless heavenly ghost. Only by killing the faceless heavenly ghost would they have any hope of obtaining the red spider lily. Hell Pagoda. The Netherworld Emperor summoned 18 ghost Tao killing swords and directly formed the killing sword array. The sword light that could shatter the sky directly pressed down on the faceless heavenly ghost. Yellow Spring Rotation. Old ancestor Yellow Spring was even more terrifying. 1,000,000 miles of Yellow Spring surged and surrounded the faceless heavenly ghost with an aura that could obliterate all living things. Heavenly Retribution Soul Annihilation. With the Heavenly Retribution blood saber in hand, 1,000,000 miles of saber light tore through the sky. It was as if all living things were being buried under this saber. 8-directional soul annihilation technique. The river of forgetfulness, great emperor, chanted a strange scripture. Countless ghostly shadows roared in the sky and brazenly attacked the faceless heavenly ghost. Horrifying, too horrifying. It was so horrifying that it was unimaginable. These people were some of the most ancient figures in the underworld. Their cultivation was at the pinnacle of the quasi-saint realm. When they joined forces, the power that burst forth was enough to destroy this part of the world. Kakik. The faceless heavenly ghost laughed eerily. He was not afraid in the face of several quasi-saints. Instead, he was extremely excited and bloodthirsty. Lawless, faceless, all dharma and all forms. In the heavens and earth, only I reign supreme. The faceless heavenly ghost stirred up boundless resentment. His entire body turned into a black vortex. He did not evade the quasi-saints' great art of forgetfulness. Instead, he strangely melted their great art. The faceless heavenly ghost is born from the resentment of all living things. Ordinary great art is useless against him. Only by completely isolating this part of the world and preventing him from absorbing any resentment can we kill him in one fell swoop. Old ancestor Yellow Spring was very knowledgeable. He shouted at the others. This also prompted them to use their great art of forgetfulness again. They quickly sealed this part of the world and joined forces to attack the faceless heavenly ghost again. Seal the heavens and decimate the earth? The faceless heavenly ghost appeared. The resentment around him was still soaring. He roared in a sinister voice, "You can't kill me." Bang! 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 The world was in chaos. Mountains and rivers were destroyed. An earth-shattering battle broke out. The few of them instantly clashed with the faceless heavenly ghost. The scene of destruction was simply unbearable. The void collapsed and the heavens were pierced. All kinds of explosive power burst forth. The laws of heaven and earth were constantly being destroyed. The faceless heavenly ghost was indeed extremely terrifying. Even when facing the attacks of several quasi-saints, he did not show any signs of being defeated. Instead, he attacked them with extreme ferocity. Chapter 863. Time passed bit by bit. The sun did not rise or set in the underworld, but as time slowly passed, the shocking battle lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Neither side could do anything to the other. In the distance, the ghost emperors of the 4 cardinal directions led their endless nether soldiers to hide far away. Some of the ghost immortals who had been hiding in the shadows had already fled, because the fight for the Hurricane Lily was not something they could participate in. If this continues, there's probably no result at all. They won't be able to kill the formless heavenly ghost. The Nether River Patriarch had been watching the battle the entire time. When he saw that the Yellow Spring Patriarch and the others were unable to kill the formless heavenly ghost, he finally concluded. Hee. Yi Xian smiled and said, "This evil spirit does have some ability. He doesn't have a real body to begin with, nor does he have a so-called primordial spirit. He's just formed from the anger and resentment of the saints. It's just a fantasy that they want to kill the formless heavenly ghost. I'm afraid it won't be long before they fall into the hands of the formless heavenly ghost." How is that possible? The Nether River Patriarch's expression changed when he heard Yi Xian's comment. He said, "These people's cultivation is on par with mine, and every one of them has an extraordinary foundation. Even if they can't kill the formless heavenly ghost, it won't be difficult for them to leave this place. A trap within a trap, a turtle in a jar. Look carefully at this place," Yi Xian sneered coldly. As soon as Yi Xian finished speaking, Patriarch Nether River was shocked. He hurriedly looked around at the world he was in. When he saw the changes in the world, Patriarch Nether River's expression instantly changed. His entire body erupted with a bloody light, and his eyes flickered with extreme shock. How can this be? The Nether River Patriarch cried out in horror. Before he knew it, the resentment in the surroundings had already turned into boundless darkness. Streaks of terrifying formation runes interweaved in the surroundings, as if it was an extremely terrifying formation that had trapped them within. They are no match for the formless heavenly ghost. The formless heavenly ghost is the condensation of the anger and resentment of all living beings. If he wanted to defeat them, he would have done so long ago. He is only stalling for time to activate this formation. If I'm not wrong, he wants to refine everyone in this formation. Yi Xian said with a contemptuous smile. Refine us? Upon hearing Yi Xian's words, the Nether River Patriarch muttered in horror. He simply could not believe this fact. Do you really think the red spider lily has bloomed? Yi Xian clasped his hands behind his back as he gazed at the blooming red spider lilies in the distance. A cold smile appeared on his lips. The so-called red spider lily is indeed real, but if you take a closer look, this red spider lily still has one last leaf that has yet to bloom. I'm afraid that in order for the red spider lily to truly bloom, a so-called blood sacrifice is required. And the sacrifices are all of us here. Yi Xian said coldly. You mean to say that the formless heavenly ghost is plotting to trap all of us and then use this blood sacrifice formation to refine us? The Nether River Patriarch muttered. Wrong. It is not the formless heavenly ghost who is plotting, but the person behind him. The formless heavenly ghost is nothing more than a pawn. Yi Xian slowly shook his head. Yi Xian, why are you still so calm? Why aren't you and I working together to break this formation? The Nether River Patriarch had already sensed the horror of this blood sacrifice formation, so he was not in the mood to pursue the matter. Instead, he urged Yi Xian to work together with him. Otherwise, once the blood sacrifice formation was activated, they would definitely suffer a great calamity. What are you afraid of? It's just a blood sacrifice formation. Just wait and see. Yi Xian said with a smile. Roar. Suddenly, a ghastly howl was heard, accompanied by a few muffled groans. Bang! 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 Resentment covered the sky, and gloomy light shone tragically. The Yellow Spring Patriarch and the others spat out blood as they fell from the sky. Each of them had a bloody hole in their chest, and the scene was so tragic that one could not bear to look at it directly. Rumble. The ground shook and exploded. The Yellow Spring Patriarch and the others fell on both sides of the River of Forgetfulness. They had suffered a fatal blow from the formless heavenly ghost and were now lying limp on the ground, bathed in blood. Kakik. The faceless heavenly ghost appeared in front of them like a cat toying with a mouse. It looked down on them from a high vantage point. You guys are really weak. The formless heavenly ghost sneered. At this moment, the world had already darkened. Streaks of blood-red light flickered in the sky, and the formation runes in all directions rose, completely sealing off this part of the world. Blood. Blood sacrifice formation, it's actually the blood sacrifice formation. The Yellow Spring Patriarch roared in horror. He looked up at the formless heavenly ghost and instantly understood everything. He is just toying with us, his real goal is to activate this blood sacrifice formation. The River of Forgetfulness Great Emperor roared furiously. Wang! The void surged and rippled. The heavenly execution turned into a ray of light and tried to escape. However, before he could escape, the blood sacrifice formation in the sky rumbled and activated. A blood-red thunderbolt struck down, and the heavenly execution let out a groan. The heavenly execution's flesh was split open, and he fell to the ground again. The Three Lives blood formation has been successfully activated. Today, all of you will die here. None of you will survive. The formless heavenly ghost sneered, and his voice was filled with contempt. Styx, what are you waiting for? If we die, you guys won't live either. The River of Forgetfulness Great Emperor suddenly roared at the Styx ancestor. His eyes were as red as blood. At this moment, all of them were seriously injured. Only the Styx ancestor was in peak condition. Furthermore, the Styx ancestor was different from them. He had the nether blood sea to rely on and could hold back the formless heavenly ghost. As long as they were given some time to recover, they might be able to break the three lives blood formation if they worked together. Ha! Without waiting for the stick's ancestor to reply, the formless heavenly ghost sneered, the three lives blood formation has completely sealed off this place. No matter how much you struggle, it will be useless. Today, all of you will become nourishment for the red spider lily, and this ghost can finally escape. Little thing, ask the person behind you to come out. I've seen enough of this show. Suddenly, just as the faceless heavenly ghost was feeling extremely pleased with himself, a voice came from behind him. The voice came out of nowhere, but it caused the faceless heavenly ghost to stop breathing. He turned around abruptly and took 3 steps back in panic. How is this possible? When Yi Xian strangely appeared behind him, he didn't notice it in the slightest. This caused the formless heavenly ghost to be terrified to the extreme, and its aura was in chaos. Who are you? The formless heavenly ghost's intuition was very sensitive. Although the person in front of him did not reveal any aura, he felt a sense of fear in his heart. This was the second time he had experienced this feeling. The first time was when he was suppressed by that person at birth and became her captive. Come. In the face of the formless heavenly ghost's question, Yi Xian did not answer at all. He smiled slightly and stretched out his palm. An extremely shocking thing happened. Buzz! The world changed and the void was destroyed. The red spider lily floating in the void fell into Yi Xian's palm in an instant. Even the formless heavenly ghost could not react in time. How dare you? Return the red spider lily to me. The formless heavenly ghost was instantly awakened. He let out a furious roar and charged at Yi Xian with boundless resentment. The world around him shattered with a loud bang. His terrifying power was too frightening. Chapter 864. Get out of the way. The Nether River Patriarch warned as he watched the faceless heavenly ghost lunge at Yi Xian. He was deeply afraid that Yi Xian would be killed by the faceless heavenly ghost. It was no wonder that the Nether River Patriarch was so nervous. After all, the faceless heavenly ghost didn't have a physical form and was a condensation of the anger and resentment of all living beings. Even the most powerful quasi-saints of the underworld had been severely injured by it. Even if Yi Xian's cultivation was higher than theirs, how could he be a match for the faceless heavenly ghost? Break the formation first. Don't tangle with this evil ghost, the Yellow Springs Patriarch yelled anxiously. The faceless heavenly ghost doesn't have a physical form. You're no match for it at all. Break the blood sacrifice formation as soon as possible, the River of Forgetfulness Great Emperor shouted. Unfortunately, Yi Xian didn't seem to hear their warnings. He remained standing where he was and smiled as he watched the faceless heavenly ghost charge at him. This idiot is dead for sure. Tianzhu scolded hatefully. His eyes were already filled with disappointment, as if he had already predicted that Yi Xian would die tragically at the hands of the faceless heavenly ghost. Die. Tongtian's resentment dissipated in all directions. The faceless heavenly ghost laughed maniacally and appeared in front of Yi Xian. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it tore at Yi Xian. Dong! Suddenly, a speck of dim light grew on Yi Xian's fingertip. Wisps of chaotic dim mist swirled around him. Yi Xian was still smiling, but his appearance and figure had changed greatly. In the blink of an eye, he had returned to his original appearance. But that wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that Yi Xian was lifting his finger and gently pointing it at the faceless heavenly ghost. What happened next made everyone from the underworld fall into a deathly silence. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. One finger to disturb heaven and earth, one finger to disturb the universe. Time seemed to stop and space seemed to freeze. The world seemed to have sunk into a viscous liquid. A pressure as heavy as a mountain appeared on everyone's body, and all they could see was Yi Xian's raised finger. Wang! The void was stagnant and still. There was no earth-shattering scene, nor was there any destructive power. Yi Xian simply pointed at the faceless heavenly ghost's forehead and froze it in the void. Not a sound could be heard. Heaven and earth were silent. When this scene appeared in front of everyone's eyes, everyone felt as if they had lost their souls. They were in a daze, unable to come back to their senses. They felt as if they had fallen into a nightmare that they could not wake up from. What's going on? What the hell? Is this an illusion? The Yellow Spring Old Ancestor, the River of Forgetfulness Great Emperor, the Netherworld Emperor, the River Styx Old Ancestor, and the Sky Execution Old Ancestor looked at each other in a daze. Clearly, they had not recovered from this scene. Ah! Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced through the sky, snapping everyone from the underworld out of their daze. However, they saw the formless heavenly ghost baring its fangs and brandishing its claws in the air. The blood-curdling screams came from its mouth. Lawless and formless, all laws and all forms, in heaven and earth, only I am sovereign. Yi Xian retracted his finger from the formless heavenly ghost's forehead and said calmly, "You little evil ghost think that you have no form, but in my eyes, you are no different from an ant." Tribulation. The sword finger was like a heavenly prison, and the dark mist was like the root of the chaotic heavens. Yi Xian's sword finger danced in the sky, as if it was drawing a prison between heaven and earth, directly trapping the formless heavenly ghost in the air. Roar! An extremely terrifying scene appeared. The formless heavenly ghost howled in pain as black smoke rose from its body. It was suffering unimaginable torture in the prison that Yi Xian had drawn. It wanted to explode with boundless resentment and break free, but the prison that imprisoned it was too terrifying. Every time it tried to break free, terrifying black chains would wrap around its body, torturing it so much that it would be better to die than to live. Let me go. Ayo. Let me go. Mercy. Mercy. The formless heavenly ghost rolled around crazily in the prison and even cried bitterly as it begged Yi Xian for mercy. Such a scene was simply unbelievable. How is this possible? Defeated. The formless heavenly ghost was defeated. One strike. He suppressed the formless heavenly ghost with one strike. Old Ancestor Yellow Spring and the others cried out in horror. They simply could not accept this fact. Just a moment ago, they were beaten by the formless heavenly ghost to the point where they could not fight back. But in the blink of an eye, the formless heavenly ghost was suppressed. How could they believe this? Who are you? Suddenly, a horrifying question was heard. The Netherworld Emperor looked at Yi Xian with trembling eyes. This also made the people of the underworld come back to their senses. Only then did they realize that Yi Xian's appearance was very different from before. Who am I? Yi Xian smiled. His smile was very evil, and it made people feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. Yi Xian. Before Yi Xian could answer, the Emperor of Fengdu roared in horror from afar. When his words rang out, it caused the countless ghost soldiers to gasp. The name Yi Xian was a taboo, a huge taboo. Perhaps there were many people in the heaven, earth, and mortal realms with this name, but there was only one who could make people feel fear. Yi Xian was just a name, but the person in front of them had another name, Yi Tiandi. Silence, silence, dead silence. When Yi Xian revealed his true form, whether it was Old Ancestor Yellow Spring and the rest, or the ghost soldiers of the underworld, all of them trembled and were stunned on the spot. At this moment, the Emperor of Fengdu's face was pale and bloodless. He slowly stepped back with fear on his face. He finally understood everything. Why was the so-called Buddha Qingming able to injure old lady Yellow Spring with one blow? Why did Granny Meng once say that he was the strongest person below the sage? Everything was revealed because the opponent was not the so-called Buddha Qingming at all, but Yi Tiandi, who had stirred up a storm in the heaven and earth. The Emperor of Fengdu was very afraid because there was a great hatred between him and Yi Xian. In the past, he even wanted to kill Yi Xian because of the primordial violet vapor. Unfortunately, the heaven and earth were sealed by the blood sacrifice formation. No one could escape from this place. Even though the Emperor of Fengdu was extremely frightened, he could only stay on the spot and could not escape. I guess you guys still don't know who Yi Tiandi is? Old Ancestor Nether River chuckled and strolled to Yi Xian's side. He looked at Old Ancestor Yellow Spring and the rest with a kind face. There's no need for that. Old Ancestor Yellow Spring gradually came back to his senses and then said with a wry smile, Yi Xian, the Heavenly Emperor, is a well-known name. Even though I've never seen you in person, today I know that Yi Tiandi is really an earth-shattering person. My name is Netherworld. Greetings, Yi Daoyu. I hope you can forgive me for offending you before. Netherworld Emperor was extremely humble. He no longer had the arrogance from before. He did not dare to call himself an emperor in his speech. Instead, he used I to address himself. This also proved that he was extremely frightened of Yi Xian. Chapter 865. I am the River of Forgetfulness. Greetings, Yi Tiandi. The great Emperor of Forgetfulness cupped his hands and bowed. I've long heard of Yi Tiandi's fame, but I've never had the chance to meet you. Now that I've met you, you are indeed a hero. Heavenly Retribution praised loudly, but his eyes were filled with fear. He forced a smile on his face. This was how the world was. The strong were as heavy as mountains, and the weak were as lowly as ants. Although they had never met Yi Xian, they knew about Yi Xian's legend in detail. Today, the faceless heavenly ghost was directly suppressed by Yi Xian. This gave them a lot of pressure, so how could they dare to offend him in the slightest? Yi Xian did not feel anything in the face of their humble greetings. This was because Yi Xian was very good at understanding people's hearts. If his cultivation was weak today, these people would have taken his life even without the faceless heavenly ghost. This red spider lily is really beautiful. It must be the most beautiful flower since the beginning of time, right? Yi Xian did not respond to them. Instead, he held the red spider lily in one hand and admired it quietly. He even praised it from the bottom of his heart. This scene made Old Ancestor Yellow Spring and the others feel a little awkward. Yi Xian did not seem to have any intention of responding to them. This made them feel embarrassed and angry, but it disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. After all, Yi Xian's cultivation was so terrifying. Even if Yi Xian ignored them, they did not dare to express any dissatisfaction. Did they not see that the faceless heavenly ghost was suppressed in the void by him? When the red spider lily blooms, the flowers and leaves grow together. Only Yi Tiandi is worthy of this flower. The great Emperor of Forgetfulness rolled his eyes and flattered. Yi Tiandi is the destined one. Legend has it that the red spider lily can make one become a saint immediately. I congratulate the Heavenly Emperor first. After the Heavenly Emperor becomes a saint, I will definitely give you a big gift. The Netherworld Emperor laughed, but his smile was very stiff. It was obvious that he did not mean what he said. Yi Daoyu, I have nothing to say. Today, you suppressed the faceless heavenly ghost, so the red spider lily is yours. I am willing to withdraw from this fight. I only hope that Yi Tiandi will not harm my life. The Yellow Spring Old Ancestor did not pretend to be polite. After all, his disciple, the Yellow Spring Taoist, had interacted with Yi Xian before and knew what kind of person Yi Xian was. He was definitely not a kind person. At this moment, he was seriously injured. If Yi Xian wanted to kill him, he would definitely die here. Yi Tiandi, since you have obtained the red spider lily, why don't you break this blood sacrifice array? I, Sky Execution, will definitely repay the Heavenly Emperor's kindness today. Sky Execution's eyes moved and he bowed humbly to Yi Xian. Unfortunately, Yi Xian did not seem to hear their words. He was only admiring the red spider lily in his hand. This made them feel very awkward. They did not know what Yi Xian was thinking. Yi Xian dragged the resurrection lily with one hand as he raised his eyes to look at the non-phase heavenly ghost. His voice was extremely strange. Little thing, it seems like the master behind you is quite patient. He still hasn't appeared at a time like this. It seems like this emperor is really going to take this resurrection lily away. Let me go. You're courting death. Although the faceless heavenly ghost was imprisoned in the void, when Yi Xian mentioned the person behind him, it was as if he had been given a shot of cardiac stimulant. The faceless heavenly ghost was completely enraged. If a saint doesn't appear, who would dare to make an enemy of me? How dare a puny evil ghost like you threaten me? Today, I will annihilate you. Yi Xian smiled coldly. His sword fingers streaked across the sky. Streaks of black silk wrapped tightly around the faceless heavenly ghost's body, causing him to scream miserably. It was as if he was about to be killed by Yi Xian on the spot. Master, save me! The faceless heavenly ghost screamed miserably. His cries for help could be heard from all directions. It was also at this moment that a turbid and illusory figure quietly walked over from the horizon. The light of the 6 paths of reincarnation faintly distorted this part of the world. Yi Dao Yu, where it is possible to let people off, one should spare them. The faceless heavenly ghost has already turned over a new leaf. Moreover, the red spider lily is useless to you even if you take it. I hope that you can give me some face and not participate in today's matter. Rumble. The 6 paths of law and the light of reincarnation. This figure was so imposing that heaven and earth shook with every step he took. The 6 paths of law that bloomed around him seemed to be able to bury all things. Chakravarti. King. When the light around the figure dissipated, the Nether River Patriarch called out the person's name word by word. The expressions of the people of the underworld changed slightly. They all looked at one of the most mysterious figures in the underworld in astonishment. The Chakravarti King. He was the last of the 10 kings of hell. However, he was different from the other 9 kings of hell. He was not some Daluo Jinxian, but one of the most ancient figures in the underworld. Since the establishment of the underworld, the Chakravarti King had been overseeing the 6 paths of reincarnation. He controlled the path of life and death. No one knew what his cultivation was like. Over the endless years, very few people had seen him appear in front of others. However, everyone knew that the Chakravarti King was not to be trifled with. After all, he controlled the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation. How could he be the same as the other kings of hell? The Chakravarti King had a head full of black hair and wore a long black robe. His eyes were like the twinkling stars, and his skin was as white as snow. He looked like a refined and handsome scholar from the mortal world. However, when he appeared before the people of the underworld, everyone's heart sank to the bottom. Some people were born extraordinary. When they were born, they were the brightest stars in the world. No matter where they stood, they would be the most eye-catching person. They would even be the moon surrounded by the stars. There was no doubt that the Chakravarti King was such a person. His mere appearance here made everyone feel inferior. This kind of aura that transcended all living beings was unique in the 3 realms. At this moment, the Chakravarti King had his hands behind his back. He was looking at Yi Xian from afar. His face was calm and gave off a sense of tranquility. Yi Xian was not affected by the Chakravarti King's charm. Instead, he smiled coldly and looked at the Chakravarti King mockingly. To put it bluntly, the Chakravarti King was like a tall, rich, and handsome man on earth. On the other hand, Yi Xian was the kind of person who rose up from the grassroots. However, Yi Xian despised the Chakravarti King's high and mighty attitude. In Yi Xian's eyes, goddesses, saintesses, and even God's favored children were all farts. Only cultivation was the truth. The weak should act like the weak. If they insisted on putting on airs, Yi Xian would trample them under his feet and humiliate them. Who do you think you are to ask me to give you face? Are you even worthy? Yi Xian smiled. His voice was extremely indifferent. He did not take the Chakravarti king seriously at all. The Chakravarti king's calm expression slightly changed as his aura instantly froze. He didn't expect Yi Xian to be so rude, nor did he place him in his eyes. Yi Tiandi, the underworld has its rules. After all, you are an outsider. Let me give you a piece of advice. Don't get involved in the disputes of the underworld. The red spider lily is useless to you. I hope you can understand. The Chakravarti king said in a low voice. If I were you, I wouldn't say so much nonsense. Yi Xian shook his head slightly and looked at the Chakravarti king with contempt. Yi Xian's worldview was very simple and crude. In this world, whoever had the biggest fist was the reason. Either you beat me into submission, or I beat you into submission until you kneel down and call me grandfather. What's the use of saying so much nonsense? To put it bluntly, the strong were respected and the weak were dogs. The law was in the hands of the strong. Everything else was bullshit. This was also the truth that Yi Xian had always believed in. In the absence of saints, Lao Tzu was the strongest. Although this saying was crude, it was the truest portrayal of Yi Xian. Chapter 866. Moreover, Yi Xian could tell at a glance that the Chakravarti king was at the pinnacle of the sage-to-be. The only difference between him and old ancestor Yellow Spring was that the Chakravarti king had mastered the law of 6 paths of reincarnation. He was much more powerful than old ancestor Yellow Spring, and this was the source of his confidence. Chakravarti king, save me. Just as the Chakravarti king and Yi Xian were confronting each other, the formless heavenly ghost was letting out a mournful roar. The black chains wrapped around his body were already causing him extreme pain. He was afraid that it wouldn't be long before he was turned into ashes by the black chains. Given the Chakravarti king's arrogance, he did not like the faceless heavenly ghost. However, the person behind the faceless heavenly ghost had a close relationship with him and he could not just leave him in the lurch. Yi Xian, please excuse me. The Chakravarti king's expression was calm as the light of 6 paths of reincarnation erupted and slammed directly at the cage that imprisoned the faceless heavenly ghost. He knew that Yi Xian would never let him go and he had to do it himself. Boom! There was a loud explosion and the cage collapsed. The Chakravarti king was indeed terrifying. He had mastered the power of 6 paths of reincarnation, and with a single blow, the cage that imprisoned the faceless heavenly ghost was destroyed and the faceless heavenly ghost was freed. You want to save him? Have you asked for my permission? The Chakravarti king dared to save the faceless heavenly ghost. In Yi Xian's eyes, this was an act of courting death because no one could save the person he wanted to kill unless he was a saint. Boom! The heavens collapsed and the earth cracked. The darkness was boundless. Yi Xian was a half-step sage, so his every word and action contained great power. The void was once again sealed. Dark chains were born in the void, imprisoning the formless heavenly ghost once again. This caused the Chakravarti king's expression to change slightly. He wanted to save the formless heavenly ghost again. Unfortunately, before the Chakravarti king could make another move, Yi Xian mysteriously appeared beside him and pointed a sword finger at the Chakravarti king's glabella. The dark aura that was released shocked the Chakravarti king and he retreated in panic. Do you think you can hide? Yi Xian's cruel laughter could be heard as he tapped his finger on the glabella of the Chakravarti king. As the sound of the void collapsing could be heard, the glabella of the Chakravarti king started to crack inch by inch, spreading to every part of his body. Bang! The Chakravarti king's body was smashed into smithereens and dissipated into thin air. This attack of Yi Xian's was too terrifying and too dazzling. The Chakravarti king exploded into smithereens. He couldn't even withstand a single blow from Yi Xian. Hiss! Everyone gasped in shock. When this scene appeared before the eyes of the people from the underworld, their bodies and minds trembled. They looked at Yi Xian with great fear in their eyes. Terrifying, too terrifying, so terrifying that it was unimaginable. The fact that Yi Xian had suppressed the formless heavenly ghost had already shocked everyone in the underworld. However, now that even the Chakravarti king had been annihilated by Yi Xian with a single blow, everyone in the underworld was trembling in fear. Chattering non-stop. What a useless piece of trash. Yi Xian stood tall in the void with his hands behind his back. He was emotionless as if he had just done something very casual. Killing a mere Chakravarti king was nothing to him at all. Bang, 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 bang. Suddenly, 6 explosive sounds rang out. The entire region within hundreds of millions of miles suddenly turned dim. The void between heaven and earth quietly froze. 6 murky yellow doors appeared in the sky. Strands of 6 paths of reincarnation light that could bury all living things filled the entire world. It was so terrifying that anyone who looked at it would feel as if their soul was about to be crushed. The doors of 6 paths of reincarnation. Yi Xian, watch out! Old ancestor Nether River screamed in horror and warned Yi Xian loudly. Buzz! The 6 paths of reincarnation changed. Strands of 6 paths of reincarnation light intertwined between heaven and earth. The Chakravarti king appeared once again and stood proudly in the sky, looking down at Yi Xian. The 6 paths of reincarnation are followed by reincarnation. I am in control of the 6 paths of reincarnation. The life and death of all things are in my hands. How could I not be in control of my own life and death? The Chakravarti king said coldly. There was no longer any trace of elegance in his voice. His gaze towards Yi Xian had also turned cold. The 6 paths of reincarnation, living through death. Looking at the resurrection of the Chakravarti king, Yi Xian was stunned. Then, a strange smile appeared on his face. It seemed that he had underestimated his opponent. After all, the Chakravarti king was in charge of the 6 paths of reincarnation. It was indeed a little ridiculous that a simple strike could kill him. Open! The Chakravarti king pointed his finger and the doors of 6 paths of reincarnation rotated. The 6 paths of reincarnation light instantly broke the cage that imprisoned the faceless heavenly ghost, allowing it to break free once again. I'll tear you apart. The moment the faceless heavenly ghost broke free, he roared ferociously and pounced towards Yi Xian. He was originally the condensation of the anger and resentment of all living beings. How could he not hate Yi Xian to the core after almost dying in the hands of Yi Xian? Moreover, with the Chakravarti king as his backing, the faceless heavenly ghost's perverse and ruthless nature erupted. He wanted to tear Yi Xian apart in one fell swoop. Back off! Suddenly, the Chakravarti king coldly rebuked. His expression changed slightly. He did not expect the faceless heavenly ghost to be so ignorant as to fight Yi Xian. Wasn't this an act of courting death? However, the faceless heavenly ghost was ferocious by nature. At this moment, he only wanted to kill Yi Xian. He would not listen to the Chakravarti king's orders and continued to charge towards Yi Xian. Boom! Ah! The sound of space exploding could be heard. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed as he stretched out his 5 fingers and directly restrained the non-phase heavenly ghost in his hand, causing the evil ghost to let out a low roar of alarm and anger. Ghosts are ghosts indeed. Your spiritual intelligence is so low. Your master is really ignorant to use you to control this blood sacrifice formation. Yi Xian's palm was like an ancient divine mountain as it cruelly suppressed the faceless heavenly ghost. He could not move at all. The Chakravarti king's expression was extremely cold. He wanted to save the faceless heavenly ghost, but he was extremely wary of Yi Xian's cultivation. If he attacked again, he and Yi Xian would definitely engage in an earth-shattering battle. This was not an outcome he wanted to see. Yi Xian, you can't kill him. Otherwise, you won't be able to walk out of the underworld alive. The Chakravarti king strolled over from the sky as the 6 paths gate rumbled. Clearly, the faceless heavenly ghost was extremely important. If he died in the hands of Yi Xian, it would be extremely detrimental to their plan. I can't kill him. Yi Xian laughed. His laughter was very sinister. This caused the Chakravarti king's expression to change drastically as a bad feeling rose in his heart. No. The Chakravarti king formed a series of hand seals as the 6 paths reincarnation gates spun violently. 6 streaks of light poured down from the 6 paths reincarnation gate towards Yi Xian. Scram! Heaven and earth reversed as the winds and clouds changed. Yi Xian laughed cruelly as he slapped out with his palm. Like the clouds that shook the heavens, he shattered the 6 streaks of light. Can you save the person I want to kill? Bam! Yi Xian smiled sinisterly as a primal chaos light exploded around him. His palm and finger smashed down towards the formless heavenly ghost, directly turning it into ashes. Even when it was about to die, it didn't even have the time to scream. Chapter 867. How dare you! The Chakravarti king lost his composure and went berserk. It wasn't that he couldn't bear to part with the life of the formless heavenly ghost, but the formless heavenly ghost was the source of the blood sacrifice array. Now that the formless heavenly ghost was dead, how could the blood sacrifice array be activated? Reincarnation of all things, 6 paths of reincarnation. The Chakravarti king had gone completely mad. The 6 paths door trembled endlessly, pouring down an extremely terrifying brilliance onto his body, causing the Chakravarti king to charge towards Yi Xian in an incomparably violent manner. The power of 6 paths. Yi Xian smiled viciously. He took a step forward and charged towards the Chakravarti king, completely disregarding the 6 paths of reincarnation. Die! The Chakravarti king swung his fists. Although his physique looked frail, the power he unleashed was unparalleled. He had already reached the level of a sage-to-be. Brat, you're still far from it. Yi Xian growled coldly. To compete with him in terms of physical strength, the other party was simply courting death. Great demonic fist. Yi Xian swung his arms and his fists were like heavenly hammers. The Tongtian demonic light shot up into the sky and a domineering aura surged towards the Chakravarti king. Bang! 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 The void within thousands of miles was collapsing and dazzling radiance was being annihilated. When the two of them engaged in a fierce battle, the horrifying scene was too horrifying and shook the entire underworld. There was an old legend. There was a supreme fist technique in the underworld called the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. It was said to be the #1 fist technique in the world. Not only did it nurture the power of 6 paths of reincarnation, it also nurtured the profound meaning of reincarnation of all things. When this fist technique appeared in the world, no one could withstand it and all would die under the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. At this moment, the Chakravarti king was using the power of 6 paths of reincarnation. This was his strongest technique and it showed how furious he was. Bang! 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 Yi Xian was swinging his great devil fist. Even though his physical body, which had surpassed that of an ancestor of sorcerers, could not suppress the Chakravarti king. Instead, they were evenly matched. 6 paths of reincarnation, the cycle of all things. Yi Xian, even if you have surpassed the boundary saint realm, I still have the 6 paths of reincarnation to support me. Today, I will suppress you here, the Chakravarti king roared coldly as his 6 paths of reincarnation fists burned even more fiercely. Gradually, he managed to suppress Yi Xian. Not good. The 6 paths reincarnation fist gathers the power of reincarnation of all living beings. Although the Chakravarti king's cultivation is not as strong as Yi Xian's, with the support of the 6 paths reincarnation, Yi Xian is not fighting against the Chakravarti king but the entire 6 paths reincarnation. In the distance, the Nether River Patriarch pointed out the mystery with a single sentence. His face was filled with great worry. The 6 paths of reincarnation, the cycle of life and death. This Yi Tiandi is too arrogant. From the beginning till the end, he did not take the Chakravarti king seriously. He is going to suffer a great loss. The forgetful river great emperor muttered coldly. His eyes flickered as he tried to find a way to break through the blood sacrifice array and leave this place. The forgetful river great emperor was not the only one who was looking for a way out. The others were doing the same as well. They were all severely injured, and regardless of the outcome of the battle between Yi Xian and the Chakravarti king, it was not a good thing for them. The only way to truly protect themselves was to leave this place as soon as possible. Yi Xian, no matter how strong you are, there will always be someone stronger than you. Do you really think that other than the sages, no one in this world can keep you in check? The Chakravarti king scolded coldly. The light of the 6 paths of reincarnation became even more terrifying. His fists tore through the heavens and earth, and every punch sent Yi Xian flying. Ha! Suddenly, Yi Xian's body flew back thousands of miles and pulled away from the Chakravarti king. A disdainful sneer sounded from all directions, and a black light quietly rose behind Yi Xian. The fist of the 6 paths of reincarnation is indeed very strong. Yi Xian lowered his eyebrows and sneered to himself. However, as soon as he finished his sentence, an extremely terrifying wave of energy spread across thousands of miles, and the murky sky gradually darkened. Kacha! Wind and clouds gathered, and the darkness was boundless. Within the thick and oppressive dark clouds, streaks of blood-red lightning flashed continuously. A blood-red light of the Tongtian dynasty poured down and instantly enveloped Yi Xian. In the void of the heavens, the gods and demons roared furiously. Eerie shadows of the gods and demons stood in all directions. If one were to observe carefully, one would realize that there were a total of 18 of these eerie shadows of the gods and demons, and they were faintly distorting the heavens and earth. Suddenly, Yi Xian slowly raised his head. His finger was glowing. This was a type of dark light that caused the surrounding heavens and earth to crumble. Cracks appeared in the void, and even the light of the 6 paths of reincarnation that filled the heavens and earth were being annihilated inch by inch. The Tongtian dynasty moved the earth, and there was no sound. Yi Xian slowly raised his finger, and the heavens and earth shook violently. A giant heavenly finger was condensed and stretched across the heavens and earth. An aura that could destroy all things also pressed down on the Chakravarti king. How is this possible? Looking at such a terrifying scene, the Chakravarti king's heart trembled. An extreme sense of terror filled his mind and caused him to take a few steps back. God-binding finger. The heavens chanted and the gods and demons roared. When Yi Xian's hoarse voice rang out, the 18 shadows of the gods and demons roared towards the heavens. The giant heavenly finger that stretched across the heavens and earth suddenly pressed down on the Chakravarti king. Rumble. The great art of immortality was a forbidden technique. The God-binding finger was one of the strongest techniques in the forbidden chapter of the Immortal scripture. When Yi Xian displayed such a powerful technique, the Chakravarti king's face turned pale. He frantically activated the 6 paths of reincarnation fist in an attempt to negate Yi Xian's attack. Kacha! The sound of a mirror shattering could be heard. The Chakravarti king's fists were crumbling inch by inch. The light of the 6 paths of reincarnation on his body was also being annihilated. Even the 6 paths door behind him was shaking violently as if it was going to collapse at any moment. Bam! Damn it! The Chakravarti king roared. His arms exploded and the giant heavenly finger pressed down on his body, causing his body to crumble inch by inch. Amidst his endless roars, he was reduced to a puff of dust once again. 6 paths of reincarnation, life from death. A spot of vital light rippled in the void. This was the real spirit of the Chakravarti king. He was roaring furiously. The 6 paths door started to operate violently once again, emitting an extremely dense 6 paths power in an attempt to revive the Chakravarti king. World-suppressing heavenly steel. Suddenly, Yi Xian stepped into the sky. Rays of dark light surrounded his body and 18 shadows of gods and demons roared behind him. When Yi Xian formed a series of hand seals with his hands and smiled cruelly, an illusory steel appeared in his hands. Behind him, the 18 shadows of gods and demons roared furiously. Rumble. The world-suppressing heavenly steel flew out of Yi Xian's hands and landed on the real spirit of the Chakravarti king. This prevented him from reforming his physical body and caused the 6 paths of reincarnation door to stop moving. It was as if everything in the world had stopped moving. Come. Yi Xian stretched out his palm. The world-suppressing heavenly steel, which was suppressing the real spirit of the Chakravarti king, landed on Yi Xian's palm. Silence, a deathly silence. Everything happened so quickly that no one could react in time. It was only when the Chakravarti king's furious roar that everyone in the underworld woke up from their stupor. Chapter 868. Why? Why is this happening? How did you break my fist of the 6 paths of reincarnation? The black stone tablet was illusory and heavy as it suppressed the real spirit of the Chakravarti king, preventing him from using the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation to come back to life. This caused him to roar in anger as he felt a terror that he had never felt before. Death. This fear was called death, and it was something that the Chakravarti king had never felt before. This was because he had always been in control of the life and death of all living beings. He believed that he was the ruler of all living beings and that he would live as long as the heavens and earth. No one could control his life. However, when his physical body crumbled and his real spirit was suppressed by Yi Xian, he finally understood the fear of death. This made him tremble in fear and he could not believe what he was going through. Wang. The void rippled. The so-called world-suppressing heavenly monument was also a great art from the forbidden chapter of the Immortal celestial scripture. This art could suppress all living beings and even seal the void. Under the suppression of the world-suppressing heavenly monument, it was a joke for the Chakravarti king to use the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation. Rumble. The black stone tablet was too heavy and it quietly fell into the hands of Yi Xian. A cruel smile appeared on his face. No matter how the Chakravarti king screamed, Yi Xian did not react at all. A weakling should act like a weakling. Am I right? Yi Xian smiled maliciously as the world-suppressing heavenly monument disappeared in his hands. However, the real spirit of the Chakravarti king was still in the hands of Yi Xian. Crack. Ah! Yi Xian clenched his 5 fingers and the real spirit of the Chakravarti king started to distort irregularly. A terrifying force was exerted on his real spirit, causing the Chakravarti king to scream in pain. You are really naive. Do you really think that you will not die just because you have the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation? Look at the 3 realms of heaven, earth, and man. Even the sages may not be immortal. How dare a clown like you act so presumptuously in front of me? Yi Xian sneered. However, his 5 fingers continued to clench, causing the real spirit of the Chakravarti king to crack. The Chakravarti king's screams of pain became more ear-piercing. Scram! Suddenly, Yi Xian flung the Chakravarti king's real spirit away. This allowed the Chakravarti king to quickly mobilize the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation and regenerate his mortal body. However, in the blink of an eye, he retreated 30,000 miles to maintain a safe distance from Yi Xian. Yi Xian, are you crazy? How can you let him go? Old Master Styx exclaimed in shock. He couldn't understand why Yi Xian would let the Chakravarti king go. Wouldn't it be better to just kill him? The Nether River Grandmaster was not the only one who was bewildered. Everyone from the underworld was the same. Yi Xian had already obtained the red spider lily and killed the formless heavenly ghost. Now that he had killed the Chakravarti king, it could be said that the outcome was already set. No one could understand why Yi Xian would let this person go. At this moment, the Chakravarti king's face was gloomy. The gate of the 6 paths of reincarnation appeared behind him. However, he didn't dare to attack Yi Xian. This was because he understood that even with the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation, he was no match for Yi Xian. In the end, he would be killed by Yi Xian. The red spider lily has bloomed. It's a pity that the red spider lily has yet to bloom. It seems like you will need my help. Yi Xian smiled eerily. His voice reverberated in all directions as if he was talking to an unknown person. This made everyone from the underworld extremely puzzled. They didn't know what Yi Xian was talking about. Rumble. Just as everyone from the underworld was puzzled, what happened next stunned everyone. The heavens shook and the blood formation rotated. Yi Xian stepped on the sky and walked towards the blood formation in the sky. When this happened, the Chakravarti king was stunned. He didn't know what Yi Xian was going to do. Yi Xian, what do you want? Chakravarti king roared. His eyes were filled with anxiety. At this moment, the entire situation was under Yi Xian's control. The red spider lily had fallen into his hands. Now that the plan was no longer under his control, how could he face the person behind him if another accident happened? You should thank me. Thank me for allowing the red spider lily to bloom today. In the sky, Yi Xian stood proudly above the blood formation. Rays of blood light shot up into the sky. Yi Xian's eerie voice reverberated in all directions. Open. The smile on Yi Xian's face was too strange, and it was filled with tyrannical excitement. His hands formed a mysterious incantation, and his entire body was actually connected to the blood sacrifice formation beneath his feet, causing it to circulate with a loud bang. Kill. The blood formation that was thousands of miles wide suddenly exploded with a dazzling power. Rays of blood light shot out and covered the entire sky. The aura that could destroy all things burst out and strangled everyone in the underworld. Yi Xian, are you crazy? What are you trying to do? The river of forgetfulness great emperor roared in shock. He struck out with a great technique, barely managing to shatter the blood-colored waterfall that was charging towards him as he roared at Yi Xian. The river of forgetfulness emperor wasn't the only one. The rest of the people also cast various great skills to defend against the power of the blood formation. They even cursed at Yi Xian. They couldn't understand why Yi Xian would suddenly attack them. Yi Xian, what are you doing? The only one who wasn't killed was the Nether River Patriarch. He took a step forward and walked towards Yi Xian. His face was filled with great shock. He couldn't understand Yi Xian's actions at all. Die. Unfortunately, Yi Xian didn't answer the Nether River Patriarch at all. He channeled his half-sage cultivation into the blood formation and completely took control of it. He erupted with an even more terrifying power and blasted the ghost immortals in all directions. Bang bang bang. The blood-red light soared into the sky, slaughtering everything. Countless Yin soldiers were turned into blood mists under the blood-red light that filled the sky. Their mournful cries resounded throughout the world. Wisps of blood mist rippled between heaven and earth, and then they were absorbed by the blood sacrifice array. Originally, the blood formation was controlled by the formless heavenly ghost. But now that the ghost was dead, Yi Xian had complete control over the formation. The power it unleashed was even more terrifying. Yi Xian, you bastard! The Netherworld Emperor held the sword in his hand and madly slashed out millions of Netherworld sword lights. However, he was already seriously injured and was still riddled with holes by the blood-colored ribbons. A large amount of blood sprayed out from his body. If he was not a sage to be, he would have been killed on the spot by the blood sacrifice array. Fellow Taoists, Yi Xian wants to kill us and use our blood as a sacrifice for the red spider lily. Everyone, kill him together. The river of forgetfulness great emperor roared furiously. He already understood everything and used all of his cultivation to desperately block the bloodlight that was attacking him. His furious roar shook the sky. Countless ghost soldiers and ghost generals had gathered on both sides of the river of forgetfulness. There were also countless ghost immortals of the great firmament. When they learned that Yi Xian wanted to use their lives as a sacrifice for the red spider lily, all of them went completely crazy and used all of their cultivation to block the attack of the blood formation. Chapter 869. How could this be? How could this be? Seeing that the blood sacrifice formation had already been activated under Yi Xian's control, countless creatures of the underworld had died tragically within it. Even the few quasi-saints had suffered a great calamity. The Chakravarti king was stunned on the spot, unable to understand why Yi Xian would do such a thing. Yi Xian, you'll die a horrible death. The forgetful river great emperor roared in despair. His body exploded under the blood sacrifice formation and a little bit of his true spirit was sucked into the blood sacrifice formation. Ah! Boom! The forgetful river great emperor's true spirit exploded and a terrifying force entered the blood sacrifice formation. This made the blood sacrifice formation even more terrifying and it started to operate even more crazily. I don't want to die. Suddenly, heavenly retribution was pulled into the blood sacrifice formation. Even though he was born from the evil extreme Yin Qi, the blood sacrifice formation could destroy everything. It instantly crushed him into the purest of energy and entered the terrifying formation. Run! When the two quasi-saints died tragically in the formation, the Yin soldiers and ghost generals fled in all directions. Unfortunately, this world had already been sealed by the blood sacrifice formation. In the end, they could only die. Swoosh! 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 Bloody light filled the sky and killed everything. A bloody mist rose into the sky and gathered into a bloody river in an instant. It rushed into the blood sacrifice formation and a dazzling brilliance erupted from the blood sacrifice formation. Yi Tiandi, please spare my master's life. Suddenly, the Yellow Spring Great Emperor knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Yi Xian frantically. The Yellow Spring Great Emperor's body was badly damaged and was being pulled by the blood sacrifice formation. It would not take long for him to die in the blood sacrifice formation. At this moment, Yi Xian was standing on top of the blood sacrifice array. When he saw Taoist Yellow Spring kneeling and kowtowing to him, his eyes flickered slightly. The power that was pouring down on Old Ancestor Yellow Spring was withdrawn at this moment, causing Old Ancestor Yellow Spring to fall to the ground. Thank you, Yi Tiandi. Thank you, Yi Tiandi. Taoist Yellow Spring wept bitterly. He quickly caught Old Ancestor Yellow Spring with joy in his eyes. In the past, when Taoist Huang Quan and Yi Xian fought in Nuwa's palace, Taoist Huang Quan gave up and admitted defeat. This was the only anxiety he had with Yi Xian, and it could be considered a small favor. Taoist Yellow Spring did not expect that the small favor he owed Old Ancestor Yellow Spring would save his life today. Taoist Yellow Spring secretly rejoiced at the decision he made back then. Ah! A mournful howl shook the netherworld. The netherworld Great Emperor could not escape death in the end. He was violently crushed into a mist of blood by the blood sacrifice formation and died tragically in the blood sacrifice formation. Yi Xian, you will die a horrible death. The sea of blood was surging and the smell of blood permeated the air. Under the blood sacrifice formation's strangulation, there was not a single living creature within a radius of thousands of miles. Their blood, soul, and essence were all absorbed by the blood sacrifice formation, causing the world to become extremely silent. Yi Xian, what are you trying to do? Taoist Nether River asked in a trembling voice. The endless slaughter caused by Yi Xian caused all living creatures to die in all directions. What am I trying to do? Yi Xian smiled faintly. He raised his eyes and looked at the direction of the Bridge of Helplessness. He said in a low voice, I'm just confirming something, a very interesting thing. Come. Yi Xian moved. He pointed his finger at the blood sacrifice formation. The blood sacrifice formation suddenly stopped rotating and an extremely pure energy burst out. It was also at this moment that the red spider lily in Yi Xian's hand shone brightly. It was actually absorbing the energy of the blood sacrifice formation at a crazy rate. The world froze and there was no ripple. The red spider lily swayed in the void. Under the nourishment of the blood sacrifice formation, the red spider lily shone dazzlingly. It's a success. It's really a success. Suddenly, the Chakravarti king shouted excitedly. He had completely forgotten about the death threat that Yi Xian brought to him. He actually came to Yi Xian's side excitedly. This was because the red spider lily's last flower and leaf had finally bloomed under the power of the blood sacrifice formation. Wang! The world suddenly changed and a strange phenomenon occurred. When the red spider lily bloomed completely, the murky sky of the underworld suddenly shone brightly with golden light. Golden lotus flowers rose in all directions and celestial music was played. The 6 paths of reincarnation rotated slightly as if they were cheering excitedly. Golden lotus descended from the sky, sweet spring water gushed from the earth, 7 flowers and 7 leaves, the red spider lily bloomed. Thank you for your help, my friend. Suddenly, a hoarse voice sounded out from the depths of the underworld. A stooped figure appeared on the bridge of helplessness. The bridge of helplessness emitted a 7-colored divine light and transformed into a rainbow bridge that spread out towards Yi Xian. Golden rain fell from the sky and golden lotus flowers bloomed in the void. An old hunchbacked figure walked along the rainbow bridge towards Yi Xian. Her hair was withered and her face was old. Her spine was slightly bent and she was holding a broken ancient bowl in her hand. She finally arrived at the world where Yi Xian was. Granny Meng. She had always existed since the underworld. No one knew her origin or her roots. However, she had been sending all living beings to reincarnate ever since the underworld was established. Should I call you Mengpa or Hudu? Yi Xian held on to the resurrection lily with one hand as he calmly looked at the person who came over. However, when his words left his mouth, the entire area suddenly became deathly silent, and there were even a few gasps of cold air. Yi Xian, what did you say? The Nether River Patriarch asked in shock. He looked at Mengpa with surprise in his eyes. Hutu. Hutu, one of the 12 ancient shamans. Supported by his disciple, the Nether Patriarch looked at Mengpa in shock. A look of horror flashed across his eyes and he seemed to have vaguely thought of something. Yi Xian, what nonsense are you talking about? Suddenly, the Chakravarti king scolded. However, his eyes were filled with panic. If one listened carefully, one would find that there was a slight tremor in his voice, which proved that his mind was in turmoil. I really want to know, when did you find out? Mengpo's eyebrows drooped, and her voice was slightly hoarse. She knew very well that her identity was extremely secretive, and even the 12 ancient witches didn't know where she was. However, Yi Xian had seen through her true body, which was also the greatest doubt in her heart. Buzz! The void swayed and ripples spread. Yi Xian did not do anything. He just turned his hand and the ancestral shaman token that belonged to Zhurong appeared in his hand. He casually threw it to Mengpa. I see. Mengpa took the ancestral shaman token and let out a long sigh. She finally understood how Yi Xian found out about her identity. Interesting, very interesting. Hutu, one of the 12 ancient shamans, is actually Mengpa of the underworld. I'm afraid this news will cause a stir in the 3 realms if it spreads to the outside world. Yi Xian said indifferently. He was still holding the red spider lily in his hand, but his eyes were fixed on Mengpa. Chapter 870. Be it Mengpa or Hutu, a name is just a title. Why are you so conflicted? Mengpa whispered in a hoarse voice. No. Yi Xian shook his head and said, the 12 ancestors of sorcery were transformed from Pangu's blood essence, but they were not harmonious. Otherwise, they would not have been seriously injured in the great tribulation of witches and demons. But I find one thing very strange. As one of the 12 ancestors of sorcery, you stayed in the netherworld. It's hard to believe that you don't have any ulterior motives, right? Although Yi Xian had guessed from the very beginning that Granny Meng was Hoodoo, there was one thing he was still puzzled about. That was why Hoodoo transformed into Granny Meng and what the so-called resurrection lily had to do with her. Everything that happened today was obviously a trap set by Meng Pa. What was her purpose? Yi Xian had some guesses, but he still had some doubts. Silence, speechlessness, silence. Meng Pa, no, she should be called Hoodoo. Hoodoo was a little silent, and her aura was a little low. Obviously, she did not want to answer Yi Xian's question, because it was related to a big secret of hers. Why do you have to make things difficult for me? This flower of the other shore is useless to you. As long as you return it to me, I will repay you a great favor in the future. Hoodoo straightened her stooped body and looked at Yi Xian with bright eyes. Her words were even more powerful. Looking at Hoodoo's solemn face, Yi Xian smiled and said, "How great is your favor? It's not less than the sage's karma. Is it possible?" Meng Pa said in a low voice. Hiss. As Hoodoo's words fell, several people present gasped. Even Yi Xian's expression changed, and he looked at Hoodoo with surprise and doubt. Sage's karma. Sage's karma was divided into good and evil. The evil karma must be settled, and the good karma must be returned. To make a simple analogy, in the past, the East Emperor Tai and Di Jun of the demon race had invited Nuwa. However, Dao ancestor Hung Jun had issued a decree not to allow the saint to appear. However, in order to repay the favor of the two demon emperors, Nuwa still disobeyed the Dao ancestors' decree and supported the ancient demon court. From this, one could see how terrifying a sage's karma was. Furthermore, if Nuwa wasn't afraid of the karma of a saint, she wouldn't have kept trying to kill Yi Xian. What she was afraid of was the bad karma she had with Yi Xian. When Yi Xian became a saint, he would settle the score with her. So, saint karma could be said to be the greatest in the 3 dimensions. Yet now, Hoodoo actually dared to say that it wasn't inferior to saint karma. So, how could everyone here not be shocked? Could it be that the red spider lily can really make you a saint? Suddenly, Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. He held the flower in his palm and calmly sensed it. However, apart from the terrifying power contained in the red spider lily and the profound meaning of life, death, and reincarnation, there was nothing else. Yi Xian, you can't give this to her. Upon hearing Yi Xian's words, Patriarch Nether River hurriedly sent a voice transmission because he believed that if the red spider lily could really become a saint, then with Yi Xian's current cultivation level, he would definitely be the best candidate. At this moment, Yi Xian was calmly sensing the fluctuations of the red spider lily. His brows gradually knitted together. No. Yi Xian directly denied that the red spider lily could become a saint because he was already a half-saint and had experienced the second tribulation of the heavenly Tao. He was only one step away from being comparable to the saint of merit. If the power contained in the red spider lily could really make him a saint, he would have sensed it immediately instead of being entangled with Hoodoo. However, if the red spider lily couldn't make anyone a saint, why did Hoodoo value it so much? What secrets did she have? A riddle was placed in front of Yi Xian, and only Hoodoo could solve it. In fact, Yi Xian had stayed in the underworld for so long not because he was interested in the red spider lily, but because he could vaguely sense that the red spider lily might be his third tribulation of the heavenly Tao. Moreover, Hoodoo was one of the 12 ancient grand shamans and an outstanding figure among the grand shamans. He wanted to know the whereabouts of the Time Grand Shaman Candle Dragon and Space Grand Shaman Di Jiang from Hoodoo. This was his true objective. Yi Xian, although your cultivation level is Tong Tian and I'm no match for you, I still want to give you a piece of advice. The red spider lily is extremely important to Hoodoo. It's useless even if you take it. Why don't you help Hoodoo and form a good relationship with her? Chakravarti King frowned. What if I don't want to form a good relationship with her? Yi Xian snapped out of his thoughts with a strange smile on his face. You! Chakravarti king was enraged when he saw that Yi Xian was unmoved by force or persuasion. He wished he could kill Yi Xian with one blow, but he also knew that he was no match for Yi Xian. Therefore, he could only speak with hatred. There was nothing he could do to Yi Xian. Yi Dao Yu, although your cultivation level has surpassed that of a sage-to-be, I just don't want to be your enemy. Why do you have to force me? Hutu strolled toward Yi Xian. Her body was still bent and her footsteps were slightly unsteady. She looked like an old woman in her twilight years. However, the heavens and earth suddenly became oppressive and the atmosphere became extremely heavy. You're no match for me. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes as he watched Meng Po walk toward him. Of course I know I'm no match for you. However, you don't know that the red spider lily and I share the same origin. Since you're unwilling to return it to me, I have no choice but to take it myself. Hutu said in a hoarse voice. Buzz. Suddenly, as soon as Hutu finished speaking, something extremely strange happened. The heavens and earth vanished and the void became chaotic. The red spider lily in Yi Xian's hand swayed and strangely turned into a golden light that shot toward Meng Po. Huh? Yi Xian frowned in the face of this sudden situation. One had to know that he'd already suppressed the resurrection lily in his hand, but this object had actually broken through his restraints. How could this not shock Yi Xian? Come! Yi Xian stretched out his finger and directly grabbed towards the resurrection lily. At this moment, the entire world was sealed, but what happened in the next moment caused Yi Xian's expression to be filled with shock. Rumble. Yi Xian's palm and fingers passed through the red spider lily as if he had grabbed a mass of air. The red spider lily turned into a golden light and instantly fell into Hutu's hand. Sigh. A long sigh came from Hutu's mouth. She quietly held onto the red spider lily. Her withered hair fluttered in the absence of wind and her turbid eyes were somewhat erratic. The red spider lily blooms, the flower blooms on the other shore. Year after year, day after day, day after day. The world only knows that the red spider lily is a great wonder of the underworld. However, they don't know that the red spider lily and I share the same origin. When I live, it lives, and when I die, it dies. Hutu didn't even look at Yi Xian as she spoke in a hoarse and trembling voice. Hutu, hurry up and start. If you delay, something unexpected will happen. When the red spider lily fell into Hutu's hand, Chakravarti Wang Red's face flushed red and he let out a low roar. His eyes turned crimson, proving how excited he was at this moment. Chapter 871. Crack. All of a sudden, the winds and clouds changed. Bolts of golden lightning wreaked havoc in the clouds. Thunderous roars of the heavenly Tao resounded in the heavens and nine-colored rain of flowers filled the world. The red spider lily in Hutu's hand floated up and swayed above her head. Rumble. The Tong Tian moved the earth, and the heavenly Tao thundered. The red spider lily bloomed with dazzling light that shot up into the sky and tore a big hole in the firmament, whoosh. Golden light of merit. How is this possible? Is the legend true? The Nether River Patriarch cried out in shock. He looked at Hutu with shock and doubt in his eyes. The 6 paths of reincarnation, the reincarnation of all things, and meritorious deeds of heaven and earth. Could this person in the legend be Hutu? The Nether River Patriarch roared in a trembling voice, as if he had thought of an extremely ancient legend. At this moment, Yi Xian looked at the scene in front of him in a daze, and heard the words of the 2 quasi-saints. His expression changed abruptly as he finally thought of something extremely shocking. Pangu opened the sky, Hongjun preached the Tao, the 3 pristine ones established the sect, and Niuhua mended the sky. Suddenly, before Yi Xian and the others came to their senses, they saw Hutu looking up to the sky and muttering to herself. She was bathed in the endless golden light of merit, as if she was recalling something. The great calamity of heaven and earth, the sorrow of all living beings, and their souls return to nothingness after death. Hutu carried the will of heaven and turned into the 6 paths of reincarnation. Since then, the 6 paths have been opened, and she has been reincarnated. Today, she has achieved supreme merit and can become the 7th heavenly Tao saint. Rumble. The heavens shook as the 6 paths of reincarnation rotated and hummed. The Chakravarti king smiled and turned into a golden light that merged into the 6 paths of reincarnation. The light of reincarnation and the golden light of merit merged and gathered toward Hutu. Yi Xian, run! She's going to become a saint. Patriarch Nether River shrieked at the sight. He instantly appeared next to Yi Xian, intending to drag Yi Xian away with him. Granny Meng, Goddess Hutu. I didn't expect her to be the 7th heaven-ordaining saint, old ancestor Yellow Spring muttered in shock. The 7th heavens will saint. Yi Xian stared blankly at the golden light of virtue around Hutu. He muttered in his sleep, and his face gradually turned gloomy. Yi Xian, hurry up and run. Don't you understand? In the past, in the great desolate world, Hutu opened up the 6 paths of reincarnation and reincarnated the 10,000 spirits that had died. She had experienced countless years of reincarnation and had already condensed an enormous amount of merit. Even though her merit was even more terrifying than Nuwas when she mended the heavens, today is the day her merit is complete and the day she becomes a saint. Nether River roared anxiously, hoping that Yi Xian would leave with him quickly. If Hutu really became a saint, they would not be able to leave even if they wanted to. Yi Xian did not move. He stared at Hutu with narrowed eyes and said in a strange and gloomy voice, the 12 ancestors of sorcery in ancient times were transformed from Pangu's blood essence, but they were born without primordial spirits. Even though Hutu has great merits, how can she become a saint? What? As Yi Xian finished speaking, old ancestor Nether River suddenly came to his senses. Yes, the 12 ancestors of sorcery in ancient times did not have primordial spirits at all. They were born with no chance of becoming saints. This was an unchangeable law. As the saying goes, where there is loss, there is gain. The sorcerer tribe had the strongest physical body, but naturally, they did not have primordial spirits. If the sorcerer tribe had primordial spirits and an extremely strong physical body, who in the 3 realms could restrain them? Buzz! Just as old ancestor Nether River was feeling bewildered, what happened next made even Yi Xian's face turn extremely solemn, let alone old ancestor Nether River. The golden light of merit and the Tongtian penetrated the ground and poured into Hutu's body continuously. The red spider lily floating above her head gradually sank into her head. Thump! 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 Primordial spirit. That red spider lily is her primordial spirit? Old ancestor Nether River screamed in horror. How is this possible? How is this possible? Hutu has condensed her primordial spirit. Old ancestor Nether roared in horror. He could not believe what he was seeing. With the power of 6 realms as the root, the golden light of merit as the source, and the blood essence of many living beings in the blood sacrifice array as the guide, I didn't expect the red spider lily to be her primordial spirit. I see, I see. The truth had been revealed. Yi Xian finally understood the whole truth at this moment. This was a grand scheme that Hutu had set up in the primeval age. It was also her path to becoming a saint. In the primeval age, there was no so-called underworld. After the souls of all living beings died, they drifted between heaven and earth. The heavenly Tao sensed it and the underworld was born. However, when the underworld first appeared, there was no 6 realms of reincarnation. At that time, Hutu made a great wish to become the 6 realms of reincarnation and reincarnate all living beings. This was a great merit that even Nuwa's mending of the heavens could not compare. However, this great merit could not be achieved overnight. It required the accumulation of endless years. That was why Hutu turned into Granny Meng and appeared on the Bridge of Helplessness. This red spider lily was the primordial spirit she had condensed. She wanted to integrate it into her body when she had enough merit. Then, she could use this great merit to become a saint and become the seventh saint of heaven. The blood sacrifice array had killed countless living beings, including the Emperor of the River of Forgetfulness and the other quasi-saints. It was to use their blood and soul essence as a guide to complete Huda's primordial spirit. Huda was a person who could amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. Now that her primordial spirit had been formed, the merit she had accumulated over countless years was also complete. Today was the day she became a saint. This was also why Huda had told Yi Xian that she could owe him a saint. Rumble. The sky was filled with golden light as Huda's primordial spirit merged with her body. Her withered hair was turning black, and her wrinkled skin was turning smooth and smooth. Her hunched body was straightening. Huda's primordial spirit was fusing with her body. Buzz. The golden light of merit, the heavenly Tao golden lotus. Huda's appearance changed drastically under the Tongtian golden light of merit. She no longer looked old and frail. She wore a golden robe and her face was dignified and luxurious. A ring of saint light quietly appeared around her, giving off the feeling of Mother Earth's benevolence. She's becoming a saint, she's becoming a saint. The Nether River Patriarch whispered in shock. There was not only great reverence in his eyes, but also deep unwillingness. Can she really become a saint? Suddenly, Yi Xian stared at Huda with sinister eyes. His voice was strange and indescribable, and it swept through the world like a cold wind from the 9 heavens. Chapter 872. I am the Mother of Earth. All souls belong to this place. Now that my merits have been fulfilled, I can immediately become a saint. I will be known as Goddess Huda. Huda was dignified and solemn. A halo of holy light rose behind her as she bowed to the heavens with a devout expression. This was the promise she made back then. Today, she would become the 7th saint of heaven with the merits of the heavenly Tao. Rumble. Golden rain fell from the sky as sweet springs gushed from the ground. Golden lotuses bloomed all over the sky as the heavenly Tao's sacred voice sounded. Endless golden light of merits poured onto Huda's body, causing her aura to grow stronger. She was slowly moving towards the saint realm. At the same time, the commotion caused by Huda becoming a saint was too great. The 3 realms of heaven, earth, and man could feel it. The hearts of all living beings trembled slightly. The 6 saints of heaven and earth were even awakened from their cultivation. Green Turing Palace. Could Yi Xian have become a saint? Tongtian was bewildered. Words of shock came from his mouth as he pinched his fingers to deduce. However, after more than 10 breaths of time, he still could not deduce who the 7th saint was. Heaven and earth change, yin and yang move together. The person who is about to become a saint is actually a woman. Tongtian's expression changed slightly. Although he did not deduce who was about to become a saint, he did deduce that the person who was about to become a saint was a woman who possessed great merits. Could Yi Xian have really perished? Tongtian's expression turned ugly. He had great expectations for Yi Xian and hoped that Yi Xian could become the 7th saint of heaven. However, it seemed impossible now. Jade Mirage Palace. Junior brother, junior brother. You have always been defeated by me. The 7th saint this time is a woman. Yi Xian has no chance of becoming a saint. He will be suppressed by the 2 saints of the West forever. Let's see how you deal with it. Yuanshi Tianzuan sat cross-legged on a green lotus as laughter came from his mouth. Da. A green ox was carrying an old man through the starry sky. The green ox looked cumbersome, but every step it took contained the trajectory of the Tao. The old man wore an 8 trigrams robe and did not reveal any aura, but he made people feel a sense of reverence when they looked at him. The Tao that can be said is not an ordinary Tao. The name that can be named is not an ordinary name. The sound of the Tao rumbled and the sea of stars surged. The old man slowly opened his eyes and let out a long sigh. The birth of the seventh saint means that the great calamity is about to begin. Will the three pure ones be able to survive this great calamity? The Western Pure Land. The two saints of the West, Xiang He, were no longer there. Their faces were ashen, and the world around them was collapsing. An uncontrollable rage was rising in their hearts. Damn it! Taoist Jiayin let out a furious roar, and the void within a radius of 10 million miles collapsed completely. The so-called merciful Buddha light destroyed everything, and even brought about a destructive disaster to the Western Pure Land. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? Taoist Kundi gritted his teeth. He was also unable to accept this fact. The seventh saint has been born. This person is not Yi Xian. Why is this happening? Taoist Kundi muttered to himself with hatred, and his brows were tightly knitted together. It was no wonder that the two saints of the West were so irritable. They had spent so much effort to convert Yi Xian because they believed that Yi Xian was the seventh saint of heaven's will. Now that the seventh saint was about to be born, and it was a woman, how could they not be disappointed? The two saints of the West had formed a saint's karma with Yuanshi and Nuwa, which was why they had taken Yi Xian away. This was the evil karma between saints. However, in order to take Yi Xian away, the two saints of the West had spared no expense to plot against Nuwa and Yuanshi, but in the end, it was all for naught. How could the two saints of the West not be irritable and disappointed? Yi Xian, this little thief, should be killed. Kundi growled in a low voice. If you don't become a saint, you're just an ant. Yi Xian is no longer useful to you and me. Quickly summon him back and kill him. Don't let the other saints know that you and I converted him. Jia Yin reminded in a cold voice. Senior brother, the seventh saint is about to be born. According to our calculations, this person is a woman and someone from the underworld. We should hurry over, Kundi said in a low voice. Alright, you and I will meet the seventh saint first. The karma with Nuwa and Yuanshi must also be made up. I'm sure the other saints will also go. When the time comes, you should act according to my signal, Jia Yin said in a low voice. Nuwa Palace. Nuwa's face was filled with joy. A golden cloud rose under her feet as she walked out of Nuwa Palace. She tore through the void and appeared outside the 33rd heaven. Clearly, she was heading in the direction of the underworld. As a saint, although Nuwa's cultivation was the lowest, she was extremely sensitive to the way of heaven. She did not know who had become a saint, but according to her calculations, the person who had become a saint was also a woman and someone from the underworld. Actually, to Nuwa, no matter who became a saint, it didn't have much to do with her, as long as it wasn't Yi Xian. Back then, when the two saints of the West took Yi Xian away, it became a sore point for Nuwa. She was deeply afraid that Yi Xian was the seventh saint and would definitely seek revenge in the future. However, now that the seventh saint was about to be born, Nuwa felt relieved. She would no longer take Yi Xian seriously. Little Yi Xian, you deserve to die. When I meet the seventh saint, I will definitely destroy your orthodoxy personally, Nuwa whispered coldly before disappearing into the starry sky. Netherworld, beside the river of forgetfulness. Merit descended from the heavens as golden lotuses filled the sky. Hutu was bathed in the golden light of merit, and the holy light around her became denser. An aura that could suppress heaven and earth was spreading out. Clearly, she was only a step away from becoming a saint. Perhaps she could become a saint in the next moment. Establishing a heart for heaven and earth, establishing a life for all living beings. As goddess Hutu, I can immediately become a saint. May the heavenly Tao be enlightened. Hutu bowed 3 times to the heavens. This was also an oath to the heavenly Tao, and it was also the final step to becoming a saint through merit. Pfft! All of a sudden, something extremely shocking happened. Hutu spat out a mouthful of golden blood. Her originally rosy face instantly paled, and she collapsed to the ground. Her body cracked like a spider web, and traces of blood seeped out. Bang! The golden light of merit exploded with a bang, and the world suddenly became extremely chaotic. Hutu kept spitting out blood, and the holy light that originally surrounded her gradually collapsed until only a faint trace was left. What happened? Looking at the changes happening to Hutu, the Nether River Patriarch cried out in surprise and bewilderment. He could not believe his eyes. At this moment, Yi Xian looked indifferently with a calm expression. It was as if he had already expected this scene, and there was not the slightest hint of surprise on his face. Why? Why is this happening? Suddenly, Hutu's expression became miserable. Clear tears flowed from her eyes, and golden blood kept flowing out of her mouth. She even looked up at the sky and muttered to herself. Chapter 873. One step, I'm only one step away. Why can't I achieve this step of becoming a saint? Hutu whispered miserably. Obviously, she had failed at the last step of becoming a saint. The difference of one step was like the difference between heaven and earth. Why? Suddenly, a cold voice sounded in Hutu's ears, which made her eyes freeze. She looked at the source of the voice and saw Yi Xian smiling contemptuously at her. Yi Xian. Hutu growled coldly. Yi Xian didn't care about Hutu's hostile gaze. He kept a smile on his face and walked slowly towards Hutu. Let me tell you why. The reason is very simple. Although you have the merit to become a saint, you need the primordial violet qi. That's why you can't become a saint. Yi Xian said softly. However, his eyes were extremely strange, and an unfathomable expression flashed through his eyes as he looked at Hutu. Primordial violet qi. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Hutu was stunned and speechless. Her limp body trembled slightly. She instantly understood. Do I really need the primordial violet qi to become a saint? Hutu whispered in a trembling voice. Her words were full of unwillingness. As one of the 12 ancestors of sorcery, Hutu knew about the Hongmeng Immortal Qi, but the Hongmeng Immortal Qi was nowhere to be found. She always believed that even without the Hongmeng Immortal Qi, she could become the 7th sage with her great merits. She had opened up the 6 paths of reincarnation, a place for all souls to return to. After countless years, this great merit was much greater than Yua's in the past. It was enough for her to become a saint. Unfortunately, when the last moment came, Hutu finally realized that although her merit was endless, she couldn't become a saint without the primordial violet qi. I can't accept this. Heaven, you're so unfair. Suddenly, Hutu looked up to the sky and mourned. It was as if she was scolding the heaven. She had experienced countless years and even stood on the bridge of helplessness as Mengpa. She had paid a great price for this day to become a saint, but in the end, it was all in vain. How could Hutu not be sad? Ha! Suddenly, just as Hutu was immersed in grief, Yi Xian let out a wild laugh, as if he'd seen something funny. Buzz! The void rippled, and a wisp of purple light quietly appeared in Yi Xian's hand. And the world suddenly froze, and even the merit golden light that filled the sky became extremely chaotic. Primordial violet qi. Primordial violet qi. A horrified roar sounded out. Old ancestor Yellow Springs trembled as he looked at Yi Xian. He was completely dumbfounded on the spot and couldn't believe what he was seeing. Yi Xian. When Yi Xian took out the primordial violet qi, Ancestor Nether River's expression changed drastically. He looked at Yi Xian as if he was looking at a lunatic, and shouted at Yi Xian angrily. At this moment, Hutu had failed to become a saint, and the only thing she lacked was the primordial violet qi. However, Yi Xian took it out at this moment. Wouldn't this drive Hutu crazy? She would definitely snatch the primordial violet qi. Ancestor Nether River couldn't understand why Yi Xian would do this. Hutu was their enemy, not their friend. Didn't he know that Yi Xian would have a chance to become the 7th saint as long as Hutu failed to become a saint? Primordial violet qi. You actually have the primordial violet chi. Rumble. The world rumbled, and explosions sounded in all directions. Hutu slowly stood up and stared at the primordial violet chi in Yi Xian's hand. Uncontrollable desire appeared in her eyes, and wisps of terrifying chi burst out. Clearly, Yi Xian's action had completely stimulated Hutu. It was like a drowning person. When he was about to drown, he would definitely not let go of a piece of wood floating in the water. Instead, he would grab it tightly. Only by doing so could he survive. Hutu was now in such a situation. She had already lost all hope of becoming a saint, but Yi Xian took out the primordial violet chi, which turned her despair into nothing. At this moment, all she could see was the primordial violet chi in Yi Xian's hand. Give me the primordial violet chi. Rumble. The world collapsed, and all things were buried. Hutu went completely crazy. Although she was a woman, she was more like a mad beast at this moment. Her eyes were scarlet as she charged at Yi Xian. 6 paths of heaven and earth, all things fall. With a loud explosion, the 6 paths of heaven operated. Hutu looked up to the sky and roared. The 6 paths of heaven and earth rotated. She did not hold back at all and directly cast out the 6 paths gate. She wanted to destroy Yi Xian in one fell swoop and seize the primordial violet chi. You want the primordial violet chi? You are really naive. The Tong Tian penetrated the ground, and the darkness was boundless. Yi Xian was a half-saint. When he blasted out his palm, the world within thousands of miles collapsed. Although the so-called 6 paths of reincarnation was terrifying, it was still blown away by his palm. Kill. Hutu had been baptized by the golden light of merits. Although she had failed to become a saint, her cultivation had stepped into the half-saint level. Moreover, she was one of the 12 ancestors of sorcery. Whether it was her body or cultivation, she was not inferior to Yi Xian. At this moment, she madly charged at Yi Xian. 3,000 earth clouds art. Hutu did not hold back at all. She made a gesture with both hands and condensed a supreme killing art. The earth within thousands of miles sank in an instant. The collapsed earth and gravel turned into thousands of miles long earth dragons and charged at Yi Xian. 6 paths of reincarnation fist. The undead were crying, and the world was mourning. Hutu's fists were capable of burying the heavens and destroying the earth. It was simply terrifying to the extreme. Although she was a woman, her fists seemed to be able to destroy the entire world. Her entire body even appeared in front of Yi Xian, wanting to kill him on the spot. Heaven-suppressing finger. Facing Hutu's incomparably terrifying attack, Yi Xian pointed a finger at her. This was the great killing technique of the undying Immortal Scripture's forbidden chapter. Under the activation of Yi Xian's half-saint cultivation, it had the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. Rumble. Suppressing the sky with one finger, the earth dragons within thousands of miles were destroyed without a trace. Moreover, this was not the end. Yi Xian's finger was too terrifying and too incomprehensible. It suddenly hit Hutu's 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Clang! A towering explosion sounded, and the world collapsed. When the two of them collided, a power that could destroy everything erupted with them as the center. The world within thousands of miles turned into a vacuum, and the boundless earth sank. Even the boundless river of forgetfulness was surging with huge waves, and then it turned into smoke and dissipated. Yi Xian. The world froze, and everything was still. Both of them were half-saints, and neither of them could do anything to the other. This attack also separated them. However, Hutu was screaming miserably, and she stared at the primordial violet energy in Yi Xian's hand. Tisk, tsk, tsk. Yi Xian shook his head slightly and said, "You're still far from being able to kill me and take the primordial violet energy." Yi Xian, no. Yi Tiandi, as long as you give me the primordial violet energy, Hutu will never forget the favor of becoming a saint. At this moment, Huda's body and mind were trembling, but she finally calmed down. This attack made her understand that her cultivation was on par with Yi Xian's. She couldn't do anything to him at all. It was impossible for her to take the primordial violet energy from Yi Xian's hand. Moreover, after Huda calmed down, her intelligence began to recover. She suddenly discovered something that made her feel surprised and doubtful. Yi Xian didn't have to take out the primordial violet energy, but he did. Obviously, Yi Xian must have his own purpose. This also made her humble herself and beg Yi Xian. Chapter 874. Huda's humble pleading was exactly what Yi Xian was thinking. Since he had taken the initiative to take out the primordial violet vapor, he naturally had his own thoughts. And now, Huda's actions were exactly what he wanted. It's very simple if you want the primordial violet vapor, but I want you to agree to 3 conditions. Yi Xian smiled and went straight to the point. What are the 3 conditions? Huda asked anxiously. The first condition is very simple. I want to share the golden light of merit with you. I will leave after you become a saint. Yi Xian said in a low voice. Share my golden light of merit? When Huda heard Yi Xian's first condition, her expression changed slightly. She looked at Yi Xian with bewilderment and fell into great hesitation. There were 2 necessary conditions for becoming a saint through merit. The first was the primordial violet vapor, and the second was the power of merit. Huda had established the 6 paths of reincarnation and accumulated a great amount of merit over countless years. It was enough for her to become a saint through merit. The golden light of merit was condensed by her, and only she could control it. To put it bluntly, only Huda could control the golden light of merit, and she could give it to others. Even if a saint wanted to take her power of merit, it was impossible for him to do so. At this moment, Yi Xian actually wanted to share the golden light of merit with her. This also made Huda extremely embarrassed. She was afraid that Yi Xian was up to something and that he was scheming against her. You established the 6 paths of reincarnation and reincarnated all living beings. You have experienced countless years to obtain this great power of merit. Even if you share the power of merit with me, it will not have any effect on you becoming a saint. Moreover, don't forget that your chi of becoming a saint has already been released. The 6 great saints of the world are already rushing here. If you don't become a saint as soon as possible, I'm afraid it will be too late for you to regret when something happens. Yi Xian spoke with assurance and spoke of the seriousness of the matter. He did not give Huda any time to think. All right, I agree to this condition. Huda gritted her teeth and finally made a decision. Yi Xian was right. The power of virtue she had gathered was too vast. Even if she gave some to Yi Xian, it would not affect her at all. Moreover, the commotion caused by her becoming a saint was too great. At this moment, all the saints were rushing over. If she had not become a saint, she did not know what would happen when she faced the 6 great saints. Moreover, Huda also knew that she had no way out. No matter what Yi Xian proposed, she had to agree because only then could she obtain the primordial violet chi and quickly become the 7th saint of merit. I've already agreed to your first condition. You can tell me the other 2 conditions now, Huda quickly said. She really didn't have much time left. I haven't thought of the other 2 conditions yet. I'll naturally come to you when I've thought of them. Yi Xian's eyes lit up as he casually sent the primordial violet chi towards Huda. This also caused Huda to be stunned as she caught the primordial violet chi in her hand. She didn't expect the primordial violet chi to be so easily obtained. This kind of experience from the ups and downs made her feel as if she had fallen into a dream. Yi Xian, what do you want me to say about you? The Nether River ancestor sighed with great disappointment in his eyes. Now that the primordial violet chi was given to Huda, it meant that she was the 7th saint. Yi Xian definitely couldn't become a saint. Such a foolish action made the Nether River ancestor extremely disappointed in Yi Xian. Unfortunately, Yi Xian did not respond to the Nether River ancestor's rebuke. Instead, he looked at Hutu with excitement and said, "I've given you the primordial violet chi. Now, it's time to fulfill the first condition." Okay. Hutu didn't waste any more words. No matter how great the grudge between Yi Xian and the shaman race was, and no matter what Yi Xian wanted from her, she couldn't become a saint without Yi Xian. This was the most important problem. All laws together, spirit and soul as one. Yi Xian formed a seal with his hands and suddenly turned into a speck of light that entered Hutu's body. This was the only way he could bathe in the golden merit light with Hutu and complete what he wanted to do. The heavens and earth are my witnesses. I am the mother of earth, and my title is Empress Hutu. I can be the seventh heavenly saint. Buzz. The primordial purple vapor floated up and instantly fused into Hutu's glabella. The golden light of merit was boundless and instantly drowned Hutu. Her aura rose again, and a faint holy light rose behind her. Rumble. Golden rain fell from the sky, sweet springs gushed from the ground, and golden lotuses bloomed all over the void. The golden merit light filled the world, and the heavenly sound of heavenly Tao came from the void. The 9 heavens rippled in the sky above the 3 realms. She has become a saint. Hutu has become a saint. I didn't expect her to be the 7th saint of heaven's will. Nether River Patriarch sighed. At this moment, the situation was set. No one could change the fact that Hutu was about to become a saint. Nether River Patriarch was completely desperate about becoming a saint himself. Clang! 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 The bell of the 3 realms was vast and mighty. Golden clouds covered the sky, and strands of 9-colored light rippled between heaven and earth. An aura that was superior to all living beings spread out from the underworld. Saint of Heaven's will, and her title is Hutu. The heavenly sound of thunder was vast and boundless. The sound of thunder rumbled in the 3 realms. A muffled sound came from the hearts of all living beings. Immortals, demons, and humans all knelt down and bowed to heaven and earth at this moment. This also completely announced the birth of the 7th saint. Ancient Demon Court. Dong Huang Tai and Emperor Jun sat cross-legged. The ancient demon's aura was decadent. They listened to the heavenly sound of thunder, but could only kneel down to express their reverence for the 7th saint of heaven's will. Hutu has become a saint and the Wu tribe has risen. Our demon tribe has finally become a thing of the past. From now on, we will withdraw from the dispute of the 3 realms. Dong Huang Tai smiled bitterly and directly passed down a decree. Brother, it seems that Yi Xian has really fallen. The 7th saint is Hutu of the Wu tribe. This also means that Yi Xian is not the 7th saint. Emperor Jun sighed. Time and fate. How could a peerless hero like Xiao end up like this? Dong Huang Tai sighed. There was no fighting spirit in his eyes. Since the battle between the 2 celestial court, the 2 demon emperors had been sincerely convinced by Yi Xian. In their hearts, they had great admiration for Yi Xian. Unfortunately, Hutu had become a saint today. This also meant that Yi Xian had fallen. Even if he did not die in the hands of the 2 Western saints, he had no hope of becoming a saint in his life. Let's go and meet Goddess Hutu. After all, a saint is above all living beings. Our ancient demon court also has to express our goodwill. Dong Huang Tai called out to Emperor Jun. The 2 demon emperors broke through the void and went directly to the nether world. Longevity Mountain, Wuzhuang Temple. Landia looked up to the sky and was speechless. Then, he shook his head sadly and murmured, I didn't expect Hutu to become a saint. Is the road ahead really dead? Let's go. The 7th saint has appeared. We should go and pay our respects. Zhen Yuanzi quietly appeared behind Landia. His voice was inexplicably low and the 2 figures disappeared. Chapter 875. Sorcerer tribe. Roar. The roar shattered the firmament. Countless sorcerer tribe members were roaring towards the sky. Their excited cheers reverberated throughout the 9 heavens. Several ancestral sorcerers were excited and roared towards the firmament. Hutu, it's ancestral sorcerer Hutu. Ancestral sorcerer Hutu has become a saint. No, we should call her goddess Hutu now. I didn't expect a saint to appear in our sorcerer tribe. From now on, the sorcerer tribe will be the leader of the 3 realms. Several ancestral sorcerers were so excited that they danced with joy. They could not control their emotions and only calmed down after dozens of breaths. Let's go to the underworld and meet the saint of our sorcerer tribe. Ancestral sorcerer Tianhao laughed loudly. Several ancestral sorcerers broke through the void and rushed towards the underworld. At the same time, all the orthodoxies, disciples of the saints, and those above the level of Daluo Jingxian rushed towards the underworld. Obviously, they wanted to meet the 7th heavenly saint. In an instant, the 3 realms were shaken. The underworld became the center of attention because the birth of the 7th saint was a major event that affected the 3 realms. No one could ignore it. The underworld. Hutu sat cross-legged in the firmament. Her body was bathed in the golden light of merit. Wisps of saint light surrounded her body. Her face was kind and peaceful, making people admire her. She was like Mother Earth, giving people a sense of vastness and vastness. She had become a saint. Hutu had finally become a saint. She was the 7th heaven-ordained saint. A wisp of saint aura covered the 3 realms. A wisp of Qi-Ji integrated into the chaos. Her saint heart had been formed. From now on, she would not die if the heavens and earth did not destroy her. However, even though Hutu had become a saint at this moment, she sat cross-legged in the sky without speaking or moving. Her body was constantly suffused with the golden light of virtue. If one looked carefully, they would notice that her eyes were flickering with surprise and bewilderment. Ah! A shrill scream shocked the gods and ghosts. There was another person in Hutu's body. That person was Yi Xian. When Hutu became a saint, Yi Xian had integrated into her body. He bathed in the golden light of merit with her and witnessed the process of Hutu becoming a saint. However, at this moment, Yi Xian was facing an unprecedented tribulation. This tribulation was Hutu's golden light of virtue, also known as the power of virtue. Logically speaking, the golden light of virtue was a great opportunity that would bring no harm to all living beings. However, when Yi Xian bathed in the golden light of virtue, his body was instantly burned to ashes, leaving only a tiny bit of his undying true spirit in Hutu's body. Yi Xian, what are you trying to do? When Yi Xian's body turned into ashes, leaving only a little bit of his undying true spirit, Hutu asked in shock. She didn't know why the golden light of virtue had caused so much damage to Yi Xian. Don't worry about me. You only need to help me conceal my aura. You must not let others discover that I am in your body. Yi Xian's body had long been burned to ashes. Now, only his undying true spirit was left. The golden light of virtue seemed to have turned into a raging fire that was constantly burning his undying true spirit. Yi Xian let out a shrill scream. Pain, extreme pain. Yi Xian's consciousness was extremely blurry. It was as if his undying true spirit would be burned to ashes by the golden light of virtue at any time. However, at this moment, a wisp of black saint power wrapped around his undying true spirit. A terrifying destructive power faintly bloomed on his undying true spirit, which made Hutu even more shocked. Yi Daoyu, I am very grateful that you have helped me to become a saint. However, my golden light of virtue will take your life. You had better leave my body quickly. Only then can you save your life, Hutu said anxiously. Whether Yi Xian died or not was not important to Hutu. However, she could become a saint because of Yi Xian's help. She still owed Yi Xian 2 favors. These were the favors of becoming a saint. If Yi Xian really died, Hutu's newly formed saint heart would not be complete. The saint heart was the most important thing to a saint. Nuwa had saved the two demonic emperors from Yi Xian in the past. She owed the two demonic emperors a favor for becoming a saint. From this, it could be seen that the karma of becoming a saint was extremely great. Only a saint with a complete saint heart could have a clear mind. Otherwise, a saint would develop an inner demon and be in danger of dying. 6. 6 saints are about to arrive. You must not let them know of my existence. Remember. Remember. Arg! Yi Xian trembled and screamed. There were even more mournful growls coming from his mouth. It was proof that he was facing an extremely terrible tribulation. Dao friend, don't worry. I understand. Huda sighed. She didn't know what Yi Xian was doing, but now was the time for her to fulfill her first condition. She could only let Yi Xian do whatever he wanted. However, she had to conceal Yi Xian's presence so that others couldn't sense it. Without destruction, there can be no construction. After destruction, there will be construction. 9 transformations will not die. The saint heart can be formed. Yi Xian screamed in his heart. His undying true spirit was being destroyed by the golden light of virtue. At this moment, he could only passively endure the golden light of virtue because this was his third tribulation of the heavenly Tao. It was also the process of him shedding his cocoon and turning into a butterfly. No one knew what Yi Xian was going through. No one knew why Yi Xian wanted to share the golden light of virtue with Hutu because all of this was in Yi Xian's plan. In fact, Yi Xian finally knew where his third tribulation of the heavenly Tao was when he learned that Hutu had condensed a huge amount of virtue and only lacked the primordial violet qi to become a saint. Yi Xian finally knew where his third tribulation of the heavenly Tao was. The golden light of virtue. Yes, it was the golden light of virtue. It could also be called the power of virtue. What was the power of virtue? Only by doing things that were beneficial to the heavenly Tao and all living beings could one condense the power of virtue. Hutu opened the reincarnation cycle and allowed all souls to return. The power of virtue she had condensed was definitely the first among the 7 saints. The power of virtue could make Hutu a saint, and Yi Xian's third tribulation was also the power of virtue. Perhaps some people would ask why the power of virtue was a great tonic that could make Hutu a saint. Why would it cause such terrifying damage to Yi Xian? In fact, the reason was very simple. It was because Yi Xian walked the path of using strength to attain the Tao. Using strength to attain the Tao meant that he had to transcend the world and not be bound by the heavenly Tao's rules. He had to stand above the heavenly Tao and become a saint of all living beings. The power of virtue was a product of the heavenly Tao, so it naturally treated Yi Xian as a great enemy. The moment Yi Xian came into contact with the golden light of virtue, his body was reduced to ashes and his indestructible true spirit was crushed. However, all things in the world reinforced and countered each other. Although the power of virtue was destroying Yi Xian, it was also helping Yi Xian in a different way. This was Yi Xian's third tribulation of the heavenly Tao. His body was destroyed and his true spirit was obliterated. This was a life and death tribulation, an extremely terrifying one. Yi Xian used the power of virtue as a tool to temper himself. He was using the power of virtue to temper his indestructible true spirit. This was because only by tempering the indestructible true spirit into a saint heart could he transcend the heavenly Tao's third tribulation and possess strength comparable to the 7 saints. Of course, every tribulation of the heavenly Tao's 9 tribulations was extremely dangerous. Yi Xian's indestructible true spirit was being tempered by the power of virtue. If he couldn't withstand it, he would really be reduced to ashes. The saint heart could be formed after the 9 cycles of life and death. Only by using the power of virtue to repeatedly temper his indestructible true spirit 9 times, allowing it to reach perfection, could he condense Yi Xian's saint heart in one fell swoop. Only then could he successfully transcend the heavenly Tao's third tribulation. However, this process was extremely difficult and rugged. One wrong step and he would be consigned to eternal damnation. At this moment, Yi Xian was being tempered by the golden light of virtue. His consciousness was already blurry and his indestructible true spirit was on the brink of destruction. If not for Yi Xian's rock-solid willpower, he would have long been obliterated by the golden light of virtue. Arg! Yi Xian roared in pain. His indestructible true spirit flickered, but no one could hear his shrill cries. Just like Yi Xian, all his successes seemed glorious, but no one knew the various sufferings he had suffered behind his glorious successes. A person's success was built up through the accumulation of endless tribulations and paid an unimaginable price. Yi Xian was such a person. Therefore, the only reason Yi Xian was able to reach his current state was because of himself. The reason he was able to grow from a lowly youth to his current state was because he had experienced countless tribulations along the way. Chapter 876. In the outside world. Hutu sat cross-legged in the air, her entire body suffused with holy light, completely concealing Yi Xian's aura. It was also at this moment that the world was certain to be destroyed, and 5 boundless figures appeared in the sky. The 5 great saints stood in the sky. When they appeared in this world, although they did not release any terrifying power, they vaguely made the world unstable. Tong Tian, Yuanshi Tianzuan, Goddess Nuwa, and the 2 sages of the West, who followed closely behind, appeared almost at the same time. They looked at Hutu in surprise. It's her. The 2 sages of the West exclaimed in shock. Grand Wizard Hutu. Yuanshi Tianzuan was stunned. Master the 6 paths, enter the reincarnation cycle, and condense the primordial spirit. What a Grand Wizard Hutu, what a Goddess Hutu. Tong Tian heaved a long sigh. With just one glance, he had seen through Hutu's situation. His words were full of praise. Hutu, you're right. To put it bluntly, before the 5 great saints came here, they were guessing who had become a saint. They did not expect it to be Grand Wizard Hutu of the Wizard tribe. Everyone knew that the Wizard tribe did not have a primordial spirit, and it was impossible for them to become a saint. Hutu condensed her primordial spirit with the 6 paths of reincarnation merit, and even became the 7th saint of heaven. How could they not be shocked? Congratulations, Sister Hutu, for becoming a saint. From now on, there is finally a woman among the saints. I won't be lonely anymore. The first one to come back to her senses was Nuwa. She walked toward Hutu with a warm smile on her face, and her words were full of intimacy. Buzz! The holy light of heaven and earth disappeared without a trace. Before Nuwa came in front of her, the reincarnation holy light appeared around Hutu's body. This also made Nuwa's expression change, and she stopped in her tracks. However, she looked a little embarrassed. Obviously, Nuwa took the initiative to get close to Hutu, but Hutu showed such an attitude. Nuwa was a little embarrassed, and a trace of shame and anger faintly flashed through her eyes. Moreover, Hutu had just become a saint, yet she had actually humiliated her like this. This made Nuwa extremely displeased, and she wondered why Hutu was so rude. Hutu has just become a saint, and her saint heart is not stable yet. Now is the time to consolidate her saint heart. Please forgive me, big sister Nuwa. Hutu sat cross-legged in the holy light of reincarnation and spoke softly. Hearing Hutu's explanation, Nuwa instantly came to her senses. She knew that she had misunderstood Hutu. She smiled and said, I was too rash. I forgot that I have just condensed my saint heart. I shouldn't be disturbed. Junior sister Hutu is the 7th heaven's ordained saint. She even opened up the 6 paths of reincarnation and allowed all souls to return to her. This kind of merit benefits all living beings in the world. Senior brother truly admires you. Yuanshi Tianzuan praised. Junior sister. Hearing Yuanshi Tianzuan's words, Hutu was slightly stunned. Then, she quickly came to her senses as if she had understood something at this moment. Junior sister, you have just entered the saint realm. You should know that Master Hongjun has already merged with the Tao and controlled the general trend of the heavenly way. We are all saints of the heavenly way. Naturally, we have to respect Master Hongjun as our master. This is also the law of the heavenly way. Taoist Jia Yin interrupted at the right time. Of course. Huta nodded gently. Those who became saints with merit were all under the heavenly way. Master Hongjun merged with the Tao, and he was the incarnation of the heavenly way. When Huta became a saint, she naturally had to respect Hongjun as her master, and so did the other 6 saints. It's a pity that only 2 of the 3 pure ones came. I don't know where senior brother Lao Tzu is. Yuanshi Tianzun smiled and said, pretending to sigh. Obviously, Yuanshi Tianzun seemed to be sighing, but in fact, his words were also indirectly showing the status of the 3 pure ones. After all, the 3 pure ones were formed by Pangu's primordial spirit. Other than Master Hongjun, the 3 pure ones were incomparably noble. This was also indirectly telling Hutu that the 3 pure ones should be the most respected among the saints. Sanctimonious and hypocritical. Suddenly, a cold rebuke was heard. This also made Yuanshi Tianzun's expression change. He suddenly looked at Tong Tian. Obviously, he did not need to judge at all. There was no one else who could say such words except Tong Tian. Junior brother, although you and I don't get along, you are still one of the 3 pure ones. Today is the day that junior sister Hutu becomes a saint. Don't be too presumptuous. Yuanshi Tianzun said coldly. I am extremely ashamed to be one of the 3 pure ones with you. Tong Tian sneered. He would not give Yuanshi Tianzun any face at all. You. Yuanshi Tianzun's face turned red. He was so angry that he could not speak. Just as he was about to scold Tong Tian again, his eyes turned slightly. The shame and anger on his face disappeared in an instant. Instead, he sneered and said, Yes, I remember. I always thought that Yi Xian would become the 7th saint. Today, junior sister Hutu becomes a saint. Naturally, junior brother Tong Tian will be extremely disappointed. Yuanshi, do you want to fight me? Rumble. The killing holy light soared into the sky. Tong Tian was furious because Yuanshi Tianzun had touched on his sore spot. This also aroused Tong Tian's great killing intent. Junior brother, you're so angry. Do you really think I'm afraid of you? Yuanshi Tianzun was already furious. At this moment, Hutu had just become a saint. If he flinched in front of Tong Tian, wouldn't this new saint laugh at him, Yuanshi? Don't be angry, senior brothers. When Yuanshi and Tong Tian were at daggers drawn, Hutu hurriedly dissuaded them. She did not care how big the grudge between the 2 was. It had nothing to do with her even if the sky fell and the earth cracked. However, Yi Xian was now in her body. If Yi Xian was exposed because of the battle between the 2, it would definitely cause a lot of trouble. Clearly, Hutu knew about the grudge between Yi Xian and the saints before she became a saint. At this moment, the 5 saints were all deeply involved with Yi Xian. If Yi Xian was exposed, it would definitely cause a huge uproar. This was not the result she wanted to see. Senior brother Yuanshi, since sister Hutu has spoken, we still have to give her face. Nuwa said solemnly while shooting Yuanshi Tianzun a glance. Clearly, the 2 saints were already on the same side. Now that Hutu had become a saint, Nuwa wanted to rope him in even more. Yuanshi naturally understood Nuwa's intentions. He sneered and withdrew the holy light around him, no longer looking at Tong Tian. The battle between saints thus ended. Swish! Swish! Amidst the resplendent radiance and roiling radiance, countless figures shot over from all directions. Clearly, the ascension of the Hutu Earth Empress to sainthood was an earth-shattering event. It was only natural that the quasi-saints of various orthodoxies and realms would come to congratulate her. The Eastern Sovereign greets Goddess Hutu. Dijun congratulates Goddess Hutu on becoming the 7th saint of heaven and earth. The two demon emperors of the ancient demon court came together. They bowed to Hutu to express the ancient demon court's respect for the seventh saint of heaven. This humble Taoist Zhen Yuanzi greets Goddess Hutu. This humble Taoist Landya greets Goddess Hutu. The ancestor of earthly immortals, Zhen Yuanzi, and Taoist Landya, who created the world, the two quasi-saints congratulated her. Chapter 877. Greetings, Saint Hutu from the Jie school. Shen Gongbao led the immortals from the Jie school to congratulate her. Congratulations, Goddess Hutu. The old man of the South Pole led the immortals from the Jie school. Hutu. Wu Guang whistled in the sky, and the ancestral sorcerer arrived. Excited shouts came from all directions. Several ancestral sorcerers came together. They were about to get close to Hutu, but when they saw the five great saints, their faces changed slightly, and they stopped immediately. Greetings, saint of my tribe. Ancestral sorcerer Tianhao was the first to wake up. He quietly winked at several ancestral sorcerers, and they bowed 3 times to Hutu together. This scene also made Dong Huangtai and Di Jun's faces change greatly. As everyone knew, the sorcerer and demon tribe were not on good terms. In the past, they even launched a great war of the sorcerer and demon tribe. Both sides could be said to be irreconcilable. Now that Hutu had become a saint, the sorcerer tribe was bound to rise. How could this not make the two demon emperors feel extremely heavy? Brothers, you don't have to be so polite. You don't have to be so polite. Hutu said softly. Although she had become a saint, her words were extremely humble, and she did not show any sense of superiority. At this moment, congratulations came from all directions, and the crowd was surging. As the seventh saint of heaven's will, Hutu naturally became the focus of everyone's attention. However, at this moment, the 6 great saints were gathered here, and naturally, no one else had a chance to speak. Sister Hutu has become a saint today. This is a joyous occasion, but I have a question. Since you can become a saint, you must have a lot of Hongmeng immortal qi. I wonder if the 7th Hongmeng immortal qi is in your hands. Nua's eyes moved slightly. When Nua mentioned the Hongmeng immortal qi, Hutu was stunned, and there was a hint of caution in her eyes. Because the Hongmeng immortal qi was given to her by Yi Xian, and Yi Xian had a great hatred with Nua, she did not know how to answer. Mingi. Suddenly, the 2 saints of the west saw a person quietly retreating. Who else could it be but Ancestor Mingi? Rumble. Zhuan Ti's face was gloomy, and he suddenly moved to seal the world. This made the Nether River Patriarch's face change drastically, and he could only turn to look at the 6 saints. Are you the one who gave the primordial violet qi to junior sister Hutu? Jia Yin's voice was cold as he stared at the Nether River Patriarch. The 2 saints of the west couldn't be blamed for their reaction. They knew very well that the primordial violet qi was in the hands of the Nether River Patriarch, and it was Yi Xian who had provided them with this information. Moreover, the 2 saints of the west had sent Yi Xian to hell to retrieve the primordial violet energy from the Nether River Patriarch and make Yi Xian the 7th saint of destiny. However, Yi Xian was nowhere to be seen, and Hutu had already become a saint. This meant that the primordial violet qi was definitely given to Hutu by the Nether River Patriarch. Moreover, the 2 saints of the west had been calling for Yi Xian ever since they entered the underworld, but they didn't get any response. Moreover, the 2 saints of the west searched for Yi Xian's aura, but they couldn't sense Yi Xian's existence at all. Tell me, have you seen Yi Xian? Zhuan Ti held the wonderful tree of 7 treasures and looked at the Nether River Patriarch with an extremely unfriendly gaze. However, Nua and Yuanshir's expressions changed when they heard his words, and they suddenly looked at the 2 saints of the west. In the past, the 2 saints of the west had schemed against them, and that was why they took Yi Xian away and suppressed him in the Western Paradise. However, after listening to Zhuan Ti's words, there must be a great secret behind it. Zhuan Ti, what the hell are you doing? Nuwa's expression was cold as she bluntly questioned the two saints of the West. If there was anyone who wanted to kill Yi Xian the most, it would definitely be Nuwa. Naturally, she was very concerned about Yi Xian's whereabouts, and at this moment, she felt that the two saints of the West were implying something, so she naturally couldn't stay calm. Junior sister Nuwa, you don't know. The two of us are extremely ashamed. We apologize to junior sister Nuwa and senior brother Yuanshi. Zhuan looked ashamed, and even put his palms together and bowed to Nuwa and Yuanshi. Seeing the two saints of the West so humble, the other saints frowned. Yuanshi Tianzuan even took a step forward and said, "What do you mean by that?" Sigh. Zhuan pretended to sigh and said, "In the past, the two of us brought Yi Xian back to the Western Paradise. We wanted to reform him, but he was a vicious demon by nature. The two of us had no other choice but to use the soul-expiating Buddhist voice to forcibly convert him." What? Soul-expiating Buddhist voice? Tongtian's expression changed greatly. As a saint, he naturally knew that these two bald thieves were extremely sinister, and the soul-expiating Buddhist voice was extremely vicious. It could completely change a person's nature. Where is Yi Xian now? Tongtian asked coldly. Unfortunately, the two saints of the West didn't even look at Tongtian. Instead, they looked at Nuwa and Yuanshi in shame and continued, "The two of us changed his appearance, hoping that he could lead the Western sect to save all living beings. We even issued a decree to make him Qingming Buddha. But who knew that even though Yi Xian had become a Buddha, his murderous intent didn't change. He secretly escaped from the Western Paradise and wanted to become the seventh saint. He came to the underworld to ask for the Hongmeng immortal chi from Mingyi to become the seventh saint. The two of us were extremely regretful. We wanted to make up for our past mistakes, but we couldn't find any trace of Yi Xian. Nonsense, despicable, and shameless." These were the words that the two saints of the West were saying at the moment. They also kept apologizing to Nuwa and Yuanshi. This was the attitude of the two saints of the West. The reason was actually very simple. Previously, the two saints of the West thought that Yi Xian would be the seventh saint. Naturally, they valued him greatly. They didn't hesitate to plot against Nuwa and Yuanshi to form Saint Karma. But now that the Hutu had become a saint, it was naturally impossible for Yi Xian to become a saint. He was also of no value to the two saints of the West. Naturally, the two saints of the West wouldn't defend Nuwa and Yuanshi for Yi Xian. Now, the two saints of the West were full of nonsense. Half of it was true and half of it was false. They were also trying to salvage their relationship with Nuwa and Yuanshi. They also wanted to find Yi Xian and hand him over to Nuwa to kill. This could be considered as making up for the saint karma between them and Nuwa and Yuanshi. Following the two saints of the West's half-true and half-false words, they also revealed everything about Yi Xian. Of course, Nuwa and Yuanshi weren't fools. They naturally didn't believe the two saints of the West's words completely. They also guessed the two's true intentions. Clearly, the two saints of the West had used the soul exorcism Buddhist voice on Yi Xian. They wanted Yi Xian to become the seventh Saint Karma. This way, they could strengthen the Western sect to fight against the three pure ones. However, Nuwa and Yuanshi didn't need to expose the two saints of the West's lies at this moment. The most important thing now was to find Yi Xian and completely kill him. "Mingyi, have you seen Yi Xian?" Suddenly, Nuwa looked straight at Mingyi. Her gaze gradually turned cold. A wisp of Saint Chi locked onto Mingyi. It wasn't just Nuwa. Yuanshi and the two saints of the West also locked their chi on the Nether River Patriarch. Tongtian also looked at Mingyi with a gloomy expression. Under the stares of the saints, the Nether River Patriarch's face turned ghastly pale. Although he was known as the Blood Sea and Mingyi would never die, he would only end up with his soul scattered if the saints killed him at all costs. Moreover, with the saints staring at him now, it would be a huge joke even if he wanted to escape. What a joke. How could I have seen Yi Xian? How could I have the so-called primordial violet qi? The Nether River Patriarch denied flatly and even pretended to be calm. He's lying. Suddenly, a figure crawled out of the ruins. This also attracted everyone's attention. They saw that the person was bathed in blood. His robes were torn, but he strode towards the Nether River Patriarch. Chapter 878. Fengdu. Mingyi's expression changed drastically when he saw who it was. Beads of cold sweat trickled down his forehead. Reporting to the sages, Yi Xian has transformed into Buddha Qing Ming, and Mingyi has always been by his side. Moreover, it was Yi Xian who gave the primordial violet energy to goddess Hutu. Fengdu wouldn't dare to lie. The emperor of Fengdu knelt on the ground and kowtowed to the sages. His words echoed in all directions, causing Hutu, who had been sitting cross-legged in the sky, to change her expression drastically. Her eyes were filled with terrifying murderous intent. No one had expected the emperor of Fengdu to survive the blood sacrifice array. This simply made Hutu's heart tremble. Old ancestor Mingyi's face was extremely pale. How could you have survived? Old ancestor Mingyi roared in a trembling voice. He clearly remembered that when Yi Xian activated the blood sacrifice array, no one survived except for old ancestor Yellow Spring and his disciples. How could Fengdu still be alive? Ha! The emperor of Fengdu laughed maniacally. His eyes were filled with boundless hatred, and a black scripture appeared in his hand out of thin air. Book of Life and Death. Old ancestor Mingyi roared in a trembling voice. He finally understood that Fengdu didn't die because of the Book of Life and Death. It saved his life. The Book of Life and Death was a product of the heavenly axiom. It contained the power of life and death. Yi Xian had made a mistake. He had never thought that the Book of Life and Death would save the emperor of Fengdu's life. This fatal mistake would expose Yi Xian. Sister Hutu, can you tell me where Yi Xian is? Nua's expression was cold as she slowly turned to look at Hutu. She no longer looked as pleasant as before. Yuanshi Tianzuan frowned and also looked at Hutu. Everything was silent, and the world was silent. Hutu's expression was solemn. She sat cross-legged in the void as the sacred light of samsara bloomed slightly. Facing Nua's question, she became silent and didn't answer the question for a long time. Junior sister Hutu, the conflict between Yi Xian and us saints is too great. He must die. Junior sister Hutu, please tell us where he is, Yuanshi Tianzuan said in a deep voice. Silence, silence, a deathly silence. Everyone's eyes were focused on Hutu. No one had expected that Nua Yuanshi would make trouble for Hutu as soon as she became a saint. Yi Xian, I won't be able to protect you anymore. Hutu's expression seemed calm, but she was secretly sending a voice transmission to Yi Xian anxiously. She had just condensed her saint heart, and her cultivation as a saint had yet to stabilize. At this moment, she naturally did not dare to ignore the hostility of the two saints. Ah! Yi Xian's indestructible true spirit exploded again, and there was a painful roar. He had just completed the third cycle of tempering, and he was still short of the sixth cycle of tempering to condense his saint heart. However, his whereabouts had already been detected by Nua and the others. The saint heart could be formed after the ninth cycle of life and death. Yi Xian had just completed the third cycle, and he was not even halfway there. If Nua discovered his whereabouts, he would definitely die. The three tribulations of the heavenly Tao. So these are the three tribulations of the heavenly Tao. Yi Xian roared loudly in Hutu's body. He finally understood at this moment that the so-called three tribulations of the heavenly Tao seemed to be using the power of merit to go through the ninth cycle of life and death, and then condense a saint heart. However, in fact, the third tribulation of the heavenly Tao was not the ninth cycle of life and death, but the saint-killing tribulation. Yes, the saint-killing tribulation. Each of the 9 tribulations of the heavenly Tao had to be faced with death and was divided into 3 major watersheds. The 3 tribulations of the heavenly Tao was the first watershed, and what Yi Xian had to experience was the saint-killing tribulation. At this moment, Yi Xian finally understood. He thought that the power of merit that appeared when Huda became a saint was the 3 tribulations of the heavenly Tao, but in fact, the real 3 tribulations of the heavenly Tao was the arrival of a saint. He understood. Everything was clear now. Yi Xian had never underestimated the 9 tribulations of the heavenly Tao. He had also been cultivating as if he was treading on thin ice. However, he did not expect the 9 tribulations of the heavenly Tao to be more terrifying than he had imagined. And the 3rd tribulation of the heavenly Tao might take his life. In the past, Nuwa Yuanshi wanted to kill him, but Tong Tian protected him. The 2 sages of the Western sect took advantage of the situation and took him away, saving his life. But today was different. There was no need to mention Nuwa Yuanshi. In order to make up for the karma with Nuwa Yuanshi, the 2 sages of the Western sect would definitely help the 2 of them to kill him. This was a situation of certain death. Moreover, Huda becoming a saint today was equivalent to Yi Xian not being fated to become a saint. Would Tong Tian protect him again? Back to the topic, even if Tong Tian still protected him and Huda owed him for becoming a saint, Nuwa Yuanshi and the 2 sages of the Western sect were not to be trifled with. This was a battle of 2 against 4. Some people might ask, Tong Tian has the immortal slaying sword formation in his hands. In the War of Gods, he fought against the 4 sages alone. Now, with Huda, wouldn't it be easy for the 2 of them to join forces to protect Yi Xian? In fact, this was not the case. As mentioned before, sages could not kill sages. Tong Tian could fight against the 4 sages alone only because of the immortal slaying sword formation. It did not mean that Tong Tian's cultivation could fight against the 4 sages. At most, his cultivation was only a little stronger than Nuwa. Compared with Yuanshi Tianzuan, he was only on par with them. Tong Tian and Huda could protect themselves if the 4 sages joined forces to fight. However, it would be extremely difficult to take care of Yi Xian. And this was only Yi Xian's speculation. If his real body was discovered, he did not know what would happen to him. However, Yi Xian was powerless now. He could not do anything at all. The only thing he could do was to speed up his tribulation. The rest could only be delayed by Huda. Taoist. Huda, no matter what, help me delay them. Yi Xian endured the pain of the undying true spirit forging and secretly transmitted his voice to Huda. After all, he had not exposed himself yet. It was important for him to delay for a while. Okay. Huda sat cross-legged in the sky. Her face was expressionless. She could not refuse Yi Xian because this was the first condition she fulfilled for Yi Xian. Senior sister Nuwa, Yi Xian has helped me to become a sage. I must repay this kindness. Forgive me for not telling you his whereabouts. Above the sky and in space, Huda spoke at a neither fast nor slow pace while facing goddess Nuwa's gaze, and her words were even powerful and resonating. So you do know where he is. Nuwa's face turned cold after hearing Huda's words. There was even a hint of anger in her eyes. Junior sister Huda, we are all sages. Do you really want to destroy the relationship between us sages for a little ant? Yuanshi Tianzuan frowned slightly. Humph. Suddenly, Huda's expression turned cold. The sacred light of samsara burst out. She said in a cold voice, are you too threatening me? Or are you saying that you want to shatter this saint's sacred heart? Is this your true goal? Nuwa and Yuanshi's expressions changed slightly. Obviously, Huda and Yi Xian already had sage karma. It was impossible for her to hand Yi Xian over. Even if they were in her shoes, they would definitely do the same. Chapter 879. The heavens and earth were heavy, and the atmosphere was oppressive. A strong smell of gunpowder filled the air between the sages. This also made everyone hold their breaths. Their eyes trembled slightly, afraid that the sages would erupt into an earth-shattering battle. Humph! After 3 breaths of time, Nuwa snorted coldly, since junior sister Hutu is unwilling to tell me Yi Xian's whereabouts, then this saint will find him personally. Absolute heaven and earth seal. Nuwa suddenly attacked. Her slender jade-like hands waved the heavens and earth, and the vast and boundless netherworld was directly sealed by her. No living being could even dream of escaping half a step from the netherworld. You. Seeing Nuwa's actions, Hutu's expression changed drastically. A wave of anger appeared in her eyes. Obviously, Yi Xian had given the primordial violet energy to Hutu. Yi Xian would definitely not leave so quickly. He must still be in the netherworld. Today, Nuwa would find Yi Xian even if she had to dig 3 feet into the ground. Rumble. The heavens and earth shook, and the saint's aura rumbled. Nuwa displayed the means of a saint. Wherever her will passed, no one could escape her eyes. Nuwa was not the only one using her means to find Yi Xian. Yuanshi Tianzuan's saint's means were even more terrifying. A ray of Dao light shuttled back and forth in the netherworld. Wherever it passed, demons and monsters would flee, causing a great shock to the netherworld. The 2 sages of the West were not willing to fall behind. They also used their own means to search for Yi Xian. The 4 sages attacked together. Although they did not release the power to destroy the heavens and earth, the terrifying saint's aura made the living beings of the netherworld tremble. At this moment, Hutu's expression was gloomy. The sacred light of samsara surrounded her body and firmly covered Yi Xian's aura in her body. Tongtian's expression was gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. Time passed little by little. The 4 sages frowned more and more because they had searched the entire netherworld but could not find any trace of Yi Xian. Impossible. There's no way he could have left hell so quickly. Nuwa bellowed furiously. Her expression was extremely gloomy. It was obvious that she had not found Yi Xian, which made her extremely irritable. Where is he? Yuanshi Tianzuan frowned. Suddenly, Jia Yin turned his eyes and looked at Hutu, only to find that Hutu was still surrounded by the holy light of samsara. This gave Jia Yin a flash of inspiration as if he had guessed something. Junior sister Hutu, you've just become a saint and your cultivation base hasn't stabilized yet. Releasing your saint aura like this won't do you any good, right? Jia Yin's simple words caused Hutu's expression to change drastically. Nuwa and Yuanshi also abruptly turned to Hutu. Their eyes lit up as if they were trying to see through the holy light of reincarnation on Hutu's body. Ah! All of a sudden, something extremely shocking happened. When the sages opened their Dharma eyes of heaven and earth, Yi Xian's indestructible true spirit suddenly became chaotic. This was because the aura of the sages directly stimulated the golden light of merit. The terrifying destructive power almost caused Yi Xian's indestructible true spirit to collapse. He's actually in your body. The senses of the sages were too terrifying. Although Hutu had used the holy light of reincarnation to conceal Yi Xian's aura, she had just become a saint and could not fully control her cultivation base. Just a slight trace was enough for Nuwa and the others to discover Yi Xian's existence. Yi Xian, I can't protect you anymore. Hutu let out a long sigh. The holy light of reincarnation suddenly erupted. At this moment, she also slowly got up and looked at Nuwa and the others with a solemn expression. Ah! Buzz! Yi Xian's indestructible true spirit had just completed the 4th transformation, but the aura of the 4 sages had already firmly locked onto him. This also caused Yi Xian's indestructible true spirit to be pulled out and appear beside Hutu. Go to hell. Without any nonsense or hesitation, when Yi Xian's indestructible true spirit appeared, Nuwa suddenly slapped at Yi Xian, wanting to kill him on the spot. Hutu, I want you to fulfill the 2nd condition. Today, no matter what, you have to help me survive this disaster. The golden light of merit was still burning Yi Xian's indestructible true spirit. Yi Xian roared in pain because he had no other choice at this moment. The only thing he could count on was Hudu. Bang! The holy light of reincarnation buried everything. Hudu also slapped at Nuwa. The hasty attack of the two sages directly shattered this part of the world. The terrifying remaining power even shot out in all directions. Rumble. Mountains were collapsing, rivers were flowing in reverse, and the land within hundreds of millions of miles began to sink. The entire underworld was shaking violently, proving how terrifying the sage's attack was. Yi Xian, you have to remember that this is your second condition. Whether I can protect you today or not, I have fulfilled my promise to you. Hudu's expression was cold as she roared. She directly blasted out a ray of holy light of reincarnation. This also caused the 6 paths of reincarnation to shake violently and directly enveloped Yi Xian, not allowing anyone to hurt him. Hudu, do you really want to be my enemy? Such a scene angered Nuwa to the extreme. She looked at Hudu with extremely terrifying murderous intent. I have no choice but to return the favor of becoming a saint. If all of you senior brothers and sisters are willing to give Hudu some face and let Yi Xian go, then he definitely won't forget your kindness today. Hudu bowed towards the saints. To put it bluntly, Hudu didn't care about Yi Xian's life or death. She also didn't want to offend Nuwa and the others right after becoming a saint. However, the favor of becoming a saint was too great. She had to protect Yi Xian with her life, even if she had to fight the sages alone. At this moment, Hudu was using peaceful means before resorting to force. She hoped that the sages would give her face. As long as she could protect Yi Xian today, she would have fulfilled her second condition. As for Yi Xian's life or death in the future, it would naturally have nothing to do with her. Sister Hudu, I can promise you anything but this. Today, Yi Xian must die. Nuwa didn't hesitate at all. Even if Hudu begged for mercy, it would be useless. In that case, I have no choice but to offend you. The sacred light of reincarnation covered the sky and earth. Hudu didn't say anything else. She could only open up a way for Yi Xian to escape. This was the only thing she could do. Reincarnation heaven and earth. Hudu raised her slender finger and pointed at the sky. As the sound of an explosion was heard, the sky was directly pierced through. The outline of the earth immortal realm could be faintly seen. Run! Hudu shouted anxiously. She activated the 6 paths of reincarnation, wanting to send Yi Xian out of the underworld. Seal. A ray of Dao light covered the sky. How could Yuanshi Tianzuan let Yi Xian escape? He immediately used the means of a saint to seal the sky and earth. This also made Yi Xian unable to escape. Amitabha. The 2 sages of the west chanted Buddha's name. The Buddha's light covered the sky and earth. They were walking slowly toward Yi Xian. Obviously, the 2 Baldies wanted to end their karma with Nuwa and Yuanshi. In this way, they could also make up for what they did to Nuwa and Yuanshi in the past. 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Hudu's face was extremely solemn. However, she still attacked the 2 sages of the west. Because she had to protect Yi Xian. There was no way out. Buzz! A red embroidered ball suddenly fell in front of Hudu. Nuwa immediately blocked Hudu's path and smashed the red embroidered ball at Hudu. Clang! The 6 paths of reincarnation fist smashed the red embroidered ball away. However, when Nuwa flipped her palm, terrifying sacred light of heaven and earth poured down and violently fell on Hudu. The 2 were completely engaged in battle. Bang! 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 The sacred light of heaven and earth turned everything into dust. The battle between saints was too terrifying. It was not something that ordinary people could participate in. Various orthodoxies fled for their lives. No one knew how many weak cultivators were unable to escape in time and were turned into ashes by the aftershocks of the two saints' battle. At this moment, the 6 paths of reincarnation rotated and poured down the sacred light of reincarnation to protect Yi Xian. However, Yi Xian was being eroded by the golden merit light. His undying true spirit was fluctuating and was moving toward the 5th transformation. However, the 2 sages of the West had already arrived in front of the 6 paths of reincarnation. It was obvious that they would break open the 6 paths door in the next moment and capture Yi Xian's undying true spirit. This was the saints' killing tribulation, the true 3rd tribulation of the heavenly Tao. Chapter 880. Bang! Yi Xian's genuine spirit exploded and his aura was strange. Enduring endless pain, Yi Xian finally completed the 5th transformation refinement. However, when he sensed the arrival of the 2 sages of the West, he felt a great sense of danger. Senior brothers, save me. A wisp of Buddha's light quietly grew on Yi Xian's inextinguishable genuine spirit. He painfully begged for help from the 2 sages of the West because Yi Xian knew that the 2 sages of the West still thought that he was a Buddhist. Only by doing so could he continue to stall for time. Amitabha. The 2 sages of the West chanted Buddha's name with a compassionate look on their faces. Yi Xian, although you have joined the Western religious sect, it is difficult for you to change your demonic nature. Today, we will vanquish the demon and return peace to the world. The 2 sages of the West were despicable, shameless, and merciless. Since Yi Xian was useless to them, the 2 sages of the West would never offend Yi Xian, Nuwa, and Yuanshi for him. Only by killing Yi Xian with their own hands could they ease their relationship with Nuwa and Yuanshi. This was also the 2 sages of the West's plan. Open. The 2 sages of the West's dharma was boundless. Xuanti wielded the Tree of 7 Wonders and broke through the 6 paths of reincarnation with supreme dharma power, directly causing Yi Xian's inextinguishable genuine spirit to appear. Jiayin even slammed his palm down on Yi Xian, wanting to kill Yi Xian on the spot. Damn it! Yi Xian roared unwillingly. The saint's tribulation was too unsolvable. In the face of Jiayin's attack, not to mention that Yi Xian's physical body was destroyed and he was undergoing the tribulation, even if he was in his best condition, he would not be able to withstand Jiayin's attack. Clang! 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 Tongtian's sword suddenly rang and a murderous aura soared into the sky. A green sword light crossed the sky and slashed down on Jiayin with the power to destroy everything. Jiayin's expression changed greatly. He turned around and slammed his palm down on the sword light. Bang! Mountains and rivers were destroyed, and the void collapsed. Jiayin retreated quickly because the sword light was too terrifying, and he knew who the owner of the sword light was. This was why Jiayin quickly distanced himself from the other party. Tongtian, are you crazy? Taoist Kundi had the wonderful Tree of 7 Treasures in his hand. When he brandished the heaven and earth vault, the sword lights that filled the sky were constantly dispersed without a trace. At the same time, Tongtian also stood in front of Yi Xian. Senior brother Tongtian, Yi Xian is not fated to become a saint. Why are you still protecting him? Jiayin returned with an ugly expression. He looked at Tongtian with a bewildered expression. It was no wonder that the 2 sages of the West reacted this way. In the past, Tongtian had protected Yi Xian because he believed that Yi Xian could become the 7th saint. However, now that Hutu had become a saint and Yi Xian was not fated to become a saint, Tongtian had once again protected him. Wouldn't it be a loss for Tongtian to incur the enmity of the 2 sages of the West for the sake of a mere ant like him? Junior brother Tongtian, you're too reckless. Today, Yi Xian must die. You'd better not get involved in this matter anymore. Green lotuses filled the sky as chaotic light of the way rumbled. The heavenly lord of the primeval beginning strolled over and stood side by side with the 2 saints of the West. When the three saints unleashed their terrifying powers, the world became unstable as if it would collapse at any moment. We sages live as long as the heavens and the earth. How could a mere Yi Xian make us sages go to war? Junior brother Tong Tian, although we don't get along well, why would you destroy our friendship for a mere ant like him? Yuanshi Tianzun said coldly. Friendship? Ha! Tong Tian laughed wildly as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. When have we ever had any friendship? Clang, 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 clang. The heavens collapsed and the earth cracked. The heavenly Tao was filled with murderous intent. A green light formation stretched across the heavens and the earth. 4 rays of sword light floated in the formation. The sword light that could destroy the heavens and the earth buzzed loudly. The world in all directions was gradually collapsing, proving that Tong Tian had summoned something terrifying. The immortal slaying sword formation. With just 4 simple words, it could crush the mountains and rivers and crush all living beings. It was also Tong Tian's most powerful spirit treasure, and also his most terrifying trump card. Pangu opened the heavens and Hung Jun passed down the Tao. Since the creation of the heavens and the earth, the immortal slaying sword formation had only been used once. That time, it had also created Tong Tian's supreme reputation. The immortal slaying sword formation. You actually used the immortal slaying sword formation to protect him. Yuanshi Tianzun was furious. There was a deep fear in his eyes. He was not afraid of the immortal slaying sword formation because sages could not be killed. However, once the immortal slaying sword formation was used, an unimaginable catastrophe would befall the 3 realms. The immortal slaying sword formation was a heavenly Tao killing formation. In the past, the 4 sages had gathered together to break this formation. However, this formation was too murderous. Once it was activated, the destruction it would cause was unimaginable. The 3 pristine ones originally came from the same source. However, because of the battle of orthodoxy, you and I have become estranged. Today, I will use all my cultivation to settle this with you. Tong Tian's roar could shatter mountains and rivers. The killing of the holy light Tong Tian penetrated the earth. Today, he wanted to protect Yi Xian again. There was no other reason other than that Tong Tian was in despair. Yes, Tong Tian was in despair. He originally thought that Yi Xian could become the 7th heaven-ordained saint. However, today, it was impossible for Yi Xian to become a saint. Sooner or later, he would have to settle the scores with Yuanshi Tianzun and the others from the Great God Investiture Tribulation. Since Yi Xian had no hope of becoming a saint and Yuanshi Tianzun and the 2 sages of the West were gathered here today, there was no better time than the present. Today, he would settle the scores from the past. Alright, since junior brother Tong Tian wants to settle the scores from the battle of orthodoxy, I will accompany you to the end. Yuanshi Tianzun was not a person to talk nonsense. He had already seen through Tong Tian's intentions. Today, he would settle it. Amit Ba. The 2 sages of the West chanted, the saint's karma can't be avoided. Then, we can only compete with senior brother Tong Tian. During the Great God Investiture Tribulation, Tong Tian activated the fairy slaying sword formation. The 4 sages worked together to break it. This also caused Tong Tian to be defeated in the Great God Investiture War. He was defeated and left the Aquamarine Palace, causing the Jie school to be unable to recover. The 4 sages were the 2 sages of the West. They were Yuanshi Tianzun, Dao Tianzun, and Lao Tzu. Today, Lao Tzu was not around. There were only the 2 sages of the West and Yuanshi Tianzun. However, Tong Tian could not wait any longer. He also took advantage of the gathering of the sages to settle the scores from the past. Yi Xian, this is all I can do for you. Take care of yourself in the future. Tong Tian did not turn back, but his voice rang in Yi Xian's ears. Then, he took a step into the sky. The fairy slaying sword formation rumbled and rotated. The 4 great heavenly Tao killing swords exploded in the sky, releasing the power to destroy the world. Kill. Rumble. The fairy-slaying sword formation traversed the sky of the underworld. The four great killing swords Tong Tian moved the ground. The fairy-slaying sword formation suppressed the past and the present. The billions of killing swords rotated. The four great killing swords buzzed. As Tongtian's sword fingers streaked across the sky, the four great killing swords blasted towards the three sages. Junior brother, you forced me to do this. Yuanshi Tianzuan roared at the sky. As one of the three pure ones, he was naturally not that simple. He flipped his hand and a 3-inch banner appeared. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.